plug that one so people know to go back.
Right.
126. This one should be 145.
Damn, that's awesome.
Crazy, huh?
145. That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's 145 episodes, man. A lot of I've had a few multiples. Obviously, like Farrell's been on. My buddy Michael Farrell's been on more than 10 times now.
That's
but
cool.
Most of the times it's it's different people. Sometimes I'll have someone on 2 or 3 times. They have like a more in-depth history, kind of like yourself. But yeah, dude, it's I don't know. It's been fun to do. It's been entertaining for me to hear some of the cool stories and stuff because I'm just a military guy anyways. I kind of grew up in the military mindset and watching Sands at Iwo Jima and all that shit. And but it's also cool to like record history and stuff,
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like as it goes for as more time is between us and all that stuff, it'll be more important that somebody closer to the time when it happened got the interviews. It's like it's like anytime you do a debrief with like S2 or something, it's like you want to get that information right out of the people as soon as you can until
Yeah, for sure.
I think it'll be good. Yeah.
No, great. It'll be great, man. I'm sure people have told their families like, "Hey, go check this out. Like, listen to it," or maybe down the road, go home or something. And I know, 100 and something, 40, whatever. We're at 145 episodes so far. That's a lot of content that my own kid will have of me just kind of talking and stuff like that later on in life. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
So it's cool. It's all around. It's all good stuff. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
I really like it. I like doing it, and I appreciate guys like you coming on, especially when you come on again to talk. So if I didn't say it already, episode 126 was your first episode. Talk about your early years. You were in the Marine Corps early on, pre 9/11 in the 90s and stuff, doing that whole thing. That's when you went to sniper school and you did the invasion of Iraq and Recon, and that's kind of where we stopped. Is when you got over to Recon, and we kind of drifted off right there.
Yeah.
So I want to get into that stuff, but I feel like this is the first episode after Russia has invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I feel like we got to address it. At least talk about it. And for those listening, this is being recorded on Saturday the 26th. So that's when our information is up to date, or that's how up to date we are. I mean, Ukraine's still standing. It sounds like Russia hasn't taken any of the cities. There's heavy fighting. Yesterday, there was reports of 2 transport planes getting shot down with airborne, like full of airborne troops and stuff. Like, it's been pretty wild. What's your take on it?
Well, so I gotta tread kind of cautiously here, so we don't derail this conversation into like the realm of the strange and esoteric. Because like I'm in a weird spot because I'm also still working for SOCOM, as a contractor. And so, I'll be real careful not to say anything specific, you know what I mean, in relation to like my access and everything at work. But I can tell you that I don't have, even being plugged in the way that I am, I don't have any special insight that makes all that fog over there any clearer, right? I'm still getting most of my information from like Telegram channels. And I will caution your listeners in this way though, but the mainstream media, no matter what flavor of it you want to consume, be it Fox News or MSNBC or RT or whatever, that's almost all propaganda at this point. Like you're seeing things come out on news that gets debunked within hours. Like this. If I'll give you a quick example. Like there's a popular image going around of a woman. I can't remember what city this supposedly happened to her in. It's a middle-aged woman. Her face is bandaged. She's a bit bloody. You might have seen this image. It was getting circulated everywhere. Well, our technology being what it is, you can do reverse image searches or whatever. And that same woman was photographed at some natural. It was like a gas and oil platform or a refinery explosion or something a year ago. And you're like, well, what is this, right? And then you've got Zelensky, who people are alleging that he fled Kyiv. But but the pro-Ukrainian side is saying no, he's here. He's going to fight till the end. So they've got a bunch of pictures of him in his kit, helmet and body armor and stuff, saying, "Hey, Zelensky's in the city. He's going to remain." The images that they're showing and distributing though are from a year ago, from a time that he went to see his troops at their forward security positions or whatever, right? So I'm not saying that he's not in Kyiv. I'm not saying that there isn't some Ukrainian fighter ace that's shot down 6 fighters. I'm not saying there's not a bunch of heroes on Snake Island or whatever. What I'm saying is be very cautious about, and this is kind of what we do, like this thing that I do on my other channels, like investigating these type of things, but like whatever is happening or over there, both Russia and the United States and basically anybody involved is going to use information to capitalize on it to make some gains, to no matter what. So like, it's real murky right now, and you're starting. The one other thing I'd say is like pay attention to who is vociferously advocating for sanctions on Russia, U.S. military action in the area. You're starting to see a bunch of dopey celebrities and shit, right? People that are traditionally conduits for what amounts to like state media for us at this point. Now, I know this is a pro-military, all military guys that watch this and consume this, but please don't take what I'm saying as being like anti-American or whatever, but I'm telling you as somebody who does deception and information operations for a living for the last 6 years, I can see the techniques as they're being employed, and there's a whole lot of propaganda, and some of it may be used on all sides, but and when I say propaganda, I don't mean that it's necessarily bad. So like if there's pro-Ukrainian stuff about like a fighter ace that shot down 6 MiGs the purpose of that could be to bolster the morale of the Ukrainians that really are fighting a resistance. So it could be that it's exactly as what they're telling you. The Ukrainians are fighting some sort of heroic resistance, and the purpose of the propaganda is to bolster their morale.
Yeah, I was going to say that about the Ghost of Kyiv. I'm like, there's not too many people very interested in debunking that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we'll just kind of let that one simmer, and a few weeks from now we'll say, yeah, that was fake or that was real or whatever. I'm with you. I think some of it is definitely pro. It's out there to like bring up morale, like, hey man, we're in this together. It's a fight. We gotta get together and fight and stuff. There's been some images of like Molotov cocktail attacks and stuff. I think were from like 2014 that people were sharing.
Right.
There was yesterday. Again, this is on Saturday, but yesterday there was a video that came out, and everybody was like, "Oh, it was a tank that ran over some dude's car."
Yeah.
I saw from a pretty reliable source on Twitter that was a Ukrainian vehicle that just lost control and accidentally hit that vehicle because it was at high speed. But everybody ran with that was a Russian vehicle targeting that civilian vehicle. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm sticking with that it's a Ukrainian vehicle because I've heard that from Okay, was it? Has that been confirmed?
Yeah, so there's on Telegram, there's several channels that I'm watching on there, and one of them had extended footage of that going down from multiple angles, and it had the action that precipitated that. So there was like a running gunfight going on in the street or whatever, and that vehicle. Now I don't know enough about the Ukrainian or Russian order of battle to identify that. I think the Ukrainians have Russian equipment, you know what I mean? So it's difficult to tell. Like
it's all in the markings. And even that can't be guaranteed
because you could paint whatever on there. Yeah. But it seemed like that vehicle was fleeing this other contact that's displayed in the other vehicles, and like didn't mean to do that. Like didn't purposely run that car. But again, it's hard for us to know looking at grainy, camera phone footage from the other side of the world. But to me, it's like this, like. And it's like this with literally everything now. What I tell people all the time is you need to, before you react to any stimulus coming from your screens, you need to put like basically a temporal bubble around you, right? Like, so before you go, now there's nothing for us to do anyway, except like say a bunch of pro-Ukrainian sentiment or whatever. But like, we're in this new hybrid warfare that is more information war than exchanging high-speed projectiles with one another, and this is what I deal with in my professional life as well. It's like part of what this game is getting people in mass to respond to stimulus. You know what I mean? So it's like they're going to run these what we would call deliverables. Like these are executions. They're going to put things out into the information environment, whether it be old pictures of people, Zelensky or whatever it is, right? And then they're going to use their very powerful AI and machine learning stuff to get an accurate depiction of how well that execution worked. Okay, basically, did they buy it?
Mm-hmm.
Did the audience we're trying to influence, are we likely to get the result that we want? And then they can craft and recock, and everybody does it. We do it. The Russians do it. Who name a player in the game, and they're doing it.
You're speaking my language as a marketing guy, because that's all. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's advertising. You're like, hey, did my target audience respond to that? Is there engagement? What's our engagement rate? What's our click-through rate here? That's not very high. We got to change it up. Yeah, it's how much of it do you think is perpetuated by the state for, like, let's say pro-Ukrainian? Because I'll be honest, let me back up. I have been sitting here all day and part of yesterday, like, man, I really wish I could hear more news out of Russia, like Russian news sources, just to hear. Even though I know it's propaganda, and they've already said that the only news allowed about what's going on in Ukraine is state-sanctioned news. Yeah. Like, they will, throw their dudes in the gulag or whatever if they report something they weren't supposed to.
There's a lot. If you want, understanding like the Russia-Ukraine thing, and I'm not like, I'm not an expert in this. I'm a layperson, but I did become interested and looked into it, and I kind of. The thing about the Ukraine is it's long been this kind of like Afghanistan. It's kind of like a place where these Slavic people come to duke it out. You know what I mean? Like it's Kyiv is older than Russia. You know what I mean? Like there's it's not just a cut and dry act of bold aggression on Putin to go in there and do what he's doing. Like there's he can make a coherent case for why that's a Russian, territory anyway, right? But that almost doesn't matter as much as like to understand like this Eurasian thing. Like if you get a chance, you can listen to. There's this guy Alexander Duskin. He's a political philosopher that Putin is heavily influenced by this guy. So they'll say like in the same way that like. Well, okay, so he's a guy that's alive today that has a relationship with Putin, and then when you can go on the internet and like YouTube and watch this guy talk, he talks about a fourth political philosophy. So you've got communism, you've got fascism, you've got capitalism, which is now late stage capitalism, and those are basically the main ones. Socialism is in there, but these are the main political orientations that people kind of fight about, right? And apparently Putin buys into this. He buys into this like fourth one now, which is kind of like harkens back to like you're gonna have like a philosopher king type of guy, and you're gonna, a return to like morality, like Christian morality, like. And then Putin, you can go online. He's on the record, like 2017 or something. He started talking about the encroaching moral degeneracy of like the NATO countries. Mm-hmm. He starts talking about, hey, look, these, and depending on what your orientation to this stuff is, he can make a coherent case for like, hey, look, what's encroaching isn't just NATO, and we're not just being surrounded by these countries and their militaries. What's also coming in is this moral degeneracy, this thing that normally precipitates a civilization collapse. Like he's making the case to his people. We're not just pushing back against being encroached on by all these, countries' militaries. We're pushing back on the whole mess, So it's like sparking a bunch of Russian nationalism. And then you've got these pockets of people in Ukraine, like in the Donbass, that are Russian separatists anyway.
Yeah, on the eastern
They've
part.
been fighting a limited scale hot war there for years now. Mm-hmm. People fighting and dying and shit. So
since before Crimea was taken, right? Yeah.
And so this is way more nuanced than just Russia and Putin bad. Put a Ukrainian flag on your Twitter. Let's send our 19-year-old infantryman over there to get it. I think it's more. But of course, the media framing of this thing, it's like anybody that says any of the shit that I just said is like a Putin apologist.
Yeah, it's funny how we both thought the same thing.
Care. Yeah, like that's.
No, I think you're right. And honestly, I think what we're doing right now is probably the right thing. I don't think we should be sending dudes in. I think as much as people don't want to hear that, like, I don't want to send my kid over there. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like, if my kid got killed, you know, he's not old enough to be in the military, but if my kid was in the military and he got killed in Ukraine for something, I'd be like, dude, what was the fucking point? You know what I'm saying? I think we could do some serious sanctions. I think the sanctions that they've talked about can be effective, and I think it's getting, at this moment right now, they're talking about pulling Russia out of SWIFT, which I didn't even know what that was, but I guess that's like the electronic banking. Basically, if you get pulled out of that, you're disconnected from electronic banking from around the world.
So
right?
here we get immediately into like the other shit. But okay, so I'll keep it to like what I just know about, because you can jump pretty easily into this conspiracy stuff, right? So to stay out of that, we just talk about what is. Like, yeah, this SWIFT system is what facilitates, you know, the US dollar is the world reserve currency, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Petrodollar and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, when you kick Russia off the SWIFT system, you make it so that they can't do all the trade that they need to do in order to like keep shit going, right? So maybe that's the case, or maybe because Putin said, he, in a thing the other day, he said, we already thought of that and we're good. Like, we've made arrangements, so that's not going to be an issue. Okay, what that means, I don't know. But the other thing here is that this could be a move to because, okay, so just think of like what we're seeing in the financial world, you know, right now, right? So like we've got inflation, people are watching their, you know, whatever their savings have just dwindle away or whatever. And we're seeing like the civil unrest in Canada. We're watching a Western democracy interact with the financial system in a way that is making it so people that are engaging in, you know, civil disobedience against their government are frozen out of their banks. But the real thing to look there was they went after the cryptocurrency. Okay, so this thing in Russia could end up with them being kicked out of SWIFT, and then them using a technology like Ripple XRP or something as their basically, you know, in the way that who was it, El Salvador or something adopted, you know, cryptocurrency as their currency. Like we could see this be some sort of move that either makes cryptocurrency like a viable thing for Russia, or it doesn't work and it destroys cryptocurrency for like everybody. Like this is and it's somebody who I'm you know, I'm into cryptocurrency and I'm watching very closely. Like, what's going to happen when we take a major player in the world economy and we tell them they can't trade anymore, but they trade anyway because they're using a technology that we, as the holders of the reserve currency, can't stop them from doing. So there's a whole.
It's way more nuanced, like you said. It's definitely way more nuanced.
There's so much going on. Yeah,
I heard
so much with this.
I heard an argument today. I think it was today about. It was saying that the reason some people don't want to pull them off the SWIFT thing, is that is backed by the U.S. dollar. If they get pulled out of that and they can no longer trade with anyone that uses the U.S. dollar for anything, then what they're most likely going to do is talk to China and then start a whole new banking kind of sector. And then we're going to end up having like an east and west different kind of sectors for finance. Yeah. And that'll challenge the U.S. dollar's viability and, like, you know, how good is it actually now compared to this other banking system that these guys have set up. So it becomes like a challenge. So that right there could be an issue down the line for whatever. It's all crazy, man. But it's in my mind, I'm like, in 2022, you know, I thought we'd come far enough as a species, especially in the Western world, you know, where it's like everything's more modernized and shit. Like, what are we doing taking other countries? Like, just to like reclaim, you know, like, what the fuck is that?
Well, because this whole thing about nationalism, it's for us plebes. The guys at the highest level of these multinational global banking institutions, and then the type of people that meet at Davos. You know, Putin is one of the World Economic Forum's young global leaders. He's part of that group of diplomats and world leaders. Trudeau is another one of them. We got people from our government that are involved in this thing in a big way. So this whole thing about national boundaries is for the plebes, right? So these global players, they see things globally. Like, they may live in a country and they may talk, you know, to get to manipulate people and to get them to do things. They may like beat some sort of nationalist drum, but these people are happy to change these lines, like especially in a place like Ukraine and that part of the world. Like, these are places historically where the the boundaries have shifted. Look at like the Soviet Union fell and completely changed the political geography over there. But I think that it's I think that what we're seeing here is mostly, if we got the truth of it, it would be it would be a financial thing. We're not the only ones. Russia, both us and Russia, our debt-based economy is failing. It requires constant like for the last 20 years, our economy has been kept afloat by our military-industrial complex. Like our wars in Afghanistan and Iraq have kept the capital in our system. And this is great. Like this is going to be, I can tell you what, no matter what's at the heart of all of it, what's going to happen is NATO countries are all going to expand their military budgets, right? They're going to increase, to like 4 or 5% of their GDP. Places like France and Germany and all these people that have been scaling back, this is going to be the very clear reason for them to increase military spending, which everybody gets their best stuff from us, So go buy Raytheon, go buy General Dynamics, go buy khaki stock, right? Like the war machine, whether this turns into a big protracted shooting war or not, the physical, the deliverable, the observable, what we all saw on our screens, right, is enough to get a bipartisan effort. You'll see bipartisan Democrats and Republicans agreeing that we need to start spending more on the military again, all that stuff. That's my prediction. I don't have any special insight or anything. I just will be very surprised if this doesn't get that machine. It never stopped running, but it'll get it pumping again.
It'll give it a little bit of life. Yeah, it justifies. Yeah. People talk about military spending, the waste in spending, and stuff like that. I think one thing a lot of people forget about is it's got to be more than 25% of the military budget is just on salaries and just for benefits for dependents and military members. So it's like part of this massive budget is the housing, education, the feeding of like over 1 million people. I think we have like 1.2 million service members, and that's not even including all their dependents that go to school on base, that go to the commissary on base, that all these different things. The budget's huge, and then all the equipment stuff comes into play. You having been at like Recon, been at MARSOC, having been a contractor now, you've probably seen that we spend a lot of money in some of these specialized units. Money's kind of wasted more for the fact that you're buying new shit that you don't know if it's going to work or not. Like you get it to test it, and then you're like, oh, that works. Now the rest of the units will buy it. Or, oh, that doesn't work. No one else buy this shit. I mean, you have to purchase some things to test it. The problem is when you get these Raytheons, Boeing and shit, they start making specific items that we request that's in the contract, but then they have their own hey, it takes this certain type of battery, or you have to buy this $10,000 connector, that only we make.
This cable doesn't plug into this thing. Yeah, proprietary stuff.
Yeah, proprietary properties and shit, That's where a lot of that goes.
That's almost an unsolvable problem, though, because imagine how crappy everything would be if it all went through, if the government was making it, it has to be the open market that produces this stuff. Otherwise it would all just suck.
There's going to be a lot of waste when you're trying to get the best stuff, because you got to dig through the junk to find the best stuff. I remember being at Anglicone and we got a set of headsets. They bought us a bunch of headsets. We got them, and a few of us used them, and we're like, these suck. Like, we do not like these. One of them, I think it was like the bone mic, in the ear, and it was just like, this is not good, dude. So all right, Dermo, these brand new headsets, that each one was $1,200, and then it was like, all right, now buy the ones we want, It's just, so you see that, and you're like, fuck, but, we wouldn't have known those sucked until we used them.
And think about this, like you were talking about all the, the cost of the dependents and all these kind of the benefits and everything. Mm-hmm. But part of that is due to the fact that you've got to entice people anymore. You got to kind of have a pretty hefty, prize at the end of it for people to join these days. Of course, there's still people that are just like, yeah, I want to go, I'm a red-blooded American fighting male. I want to go, be in the military. Tons of people still like that, but not enough. So you have to have hey, college benefits and housing and medical and all this other stuff, because there's not a real clear mandate about, it's not World War II where people are like 15-year-olds are sneaking off to go join the Navy, you know what I mean? That type of thing. It's a different time now. So you got to have something to offer people, I guess, you know, like, it's not enough. It's not really pure service. You know what I mean? It's a business agreement. Like we're involving ourselves in a contract here. You know, I expect to get this and I'll give you this.
Pride in my service doesn't feed my family, you know? Like,
well, let me ask you, like when you were joining, how much of a factor were like the benefits? Did you care at all? Yeah, right. You didn't care, right? Yeah.
No, I was military kid. I was like, I didn't even know what I was going to get paid. It's kind of like someone I think that wants to become a teacher. You know, like I hear the pay's crappy, but like, you know, that's what I want to do. That's kind of my calling.
I want to teach kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I joined. And then I was, you know, I didn't have a lot of money growing up. So being in the military was good, like, oh shit, like look at this, I'm getting paid. I'll be honest, when I first joined, I got married on boot leave. I was that guy. And then my my only kid was born later on that year. And when I first came in, I didn't. Everyone tells you, they're like, "Hey, go on SNAP, you know, go on food stamps, you know, you're a PFC.
Oh, yeah.
What is it? Substance and nutrition, something, whatever program. You know, you could get WIC, you know, free milk and cheese and all this shit." And I remember being on food stamps when I was a kid, and I was like so embarrassed. You know, I was on food stamps. I'm like, dude, fuck that. Like, I don't need anything from the government. Like, you know, I work for the government. But I'm like, I don't need assistance because I can afford the shit that I need. I can't afford the shit that I want. You know, I can't go out and get a new car. I can't go out and do shit. But what killed me was so many people in the military just go, hey, you need to be going to get WIC. You need to be going to get on this government assistance program. You need to be on this program. And it's like, I'm looking at the people on these programs with nice cars, new shit. And I'm like, dude, like, what the fuck, man? You don't need it. Like, you're using it. Yeah. I know it's there. And people will say, like, hey, if anyone deserves it, the people in the military deserve it. You know, like, fuck that, dude. If you can't afford some shit, like, if you can't afford to buy your kid formula, then you probably shouldn't be putting fucking wheels on your car. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that for a thing?
Yeah, don't get the rims yet.
You know what I'm saying?
There's a certain type of, like, person in the military that knows, like, they don't know much about their job or whatever, but they know every like way to get money. They're like, oh, if you do this kind of ditty move, but you do this first and then you file this after you get, you know, they just know like how to get like
put
all the
sandbags
like,
in your truck to weigh it down.
All the scams or whatever. It's like there's people that are in the military to just to for the stable paycheck and all the great benefits. That definitely exists.
Yeah, it's and if you're one of those people, you're no better than the people that you deride for being on food stamps and stuff that don't have a job. If you're like working the system so that you can get benefits that you don't really need, then you're part of the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, pay your own way. I'm tired of paying fucking extra taxes for people that don't need me to give them, you know, give money to them and shit. It's just that shit's difficult. So for me, the benefits was not like anything. I mean, I wasn't really looking for that. I was just looking to join the military, do something cool. And, you know, the war was going on. It was like, dude, how can I not join and do this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so when you were in, and the reason I wanted to ask you about this whole Russia going into Ukraine and stuff like that is because you have been part of an invasion force, you know? What was your feelings? Like, can you kind of relate? Do you think you can relate at all to, because let's say a lot of these soldiers, what's coming out right now is a lot of these Russian soldiers, some of them didn't even know they were going into Ukraine. They thought they were still on training exercises. Some of them, you know, that's some of the word that's coming out. But some of them, obviously, you know, they're there for the fight. Do you think you can relate with those people that are kind of in the same thing? So. You know?
I mean, and I don't know, you know, I don't know any Russian people, and I don't really know, you know, how it is for them. But if they're anything like, you know, our ground combat forces, you know, you could at a certain point, not now, but at a certain point when I was like 20 years old in the infantry, you could have told me we were going up to invade Canada, and I'd have been like, okay, cool, it's about like the action, you know what I mean? I think, you know, and you get caught up in this thing where once you're in the job, if something's going down somewhere, you want to be there. Like, it's exciting. War has always been a draw for primarily men. I think, you know, I think that it's always been something that's fascinated, like a young man's like, desire for adventure. It's
For sure.
And who knows how what the Russians think about it. Like, I don't know what the average Russian thinks about invading Ukraine, but I imagine that for their frontline troops, like they're, I don't know if they'd be stoked about it or what, but I know that no matter what, it's exciting. You know what I mean? Like it's a rare thing to experience, especially like I thought we were done seeing large scale invasions like this. I thought we've been in a kind of low intensity conflict type of vibe for a while. And I mean, I was pretty surprised by this whole thing, but yeah, to be part of one of those major invasion forces like that is pretty. I mean, it wasn't lost on me, even though I was much younger. I was like, when we were rolling, across the berm from Kuwait into Iraq, I was like, this is pretty wild. I'm invading a country. You know what I mean? Like, it makes you feel more like you're part of something historic than just, I'm on my like second or third deployment to Afghanistan. It doesn't feel momentous at all. It's just like, all right, here we go. This again, it's a different thing, like rolling across a breach like that into a country.
Oh, I bet, dude. It's got to be like the anxiousness of it. The part of it too. I think in the U.S. we're like, we're the good guys. Like, we wouldn't be doing this. If the government wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't a good reason. So I'm just here doing my job, man.
Which is crazy considering now in hindsight, like, and I know it bums people out, but I think anybody that's capable of clear thought and looks back at the reasons why we went into Iraq and Afghanistan, I don't think there's a clear-headed person that would say that those were good decisions and that if we had it all to do over again, we would do it the same way.
Yeah, Iraq for sure. Afghanistan, I feel like Afghanistan was justified for a little bit, and then after a while, it was like, what are we doing? What's the mission here?
Yeah, I mean, we after those fifth group guys did what they did, and the Northern Alliance was, Taliban was gone, Northern Alliance was there. That would have been the time to quit it. Keep the special forces guys around doing partner force stuff. But the thing that we ended up doing there clearly accomplished nothing.
Yeah, trying to stay and run an entire country or like help stabilize an entire country of warring tribes that have beef going back fucking centuries, in some cases. Like
involving ourselves in it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's crazy, though. It's a crazy world. I just, I was super surprised. Like you said, I thought there was going to be a lot of bluffing and stuff. And then I knew I had seen in some Russian media before it all went kind of dark that the Russians were doing these training exercises with Belarus along the border. And I'm like, is this an actual training exercise or are they actually building up for an attack? And it's like, fuck, dude. I don't know. It's just so crazy to see. So, yeah, we can move beyond that. I felt like we had at least had to talk about it for a minute because it's
happening.
It's happening and it's fucking crazy. And hopefully our guys don't get sucked into it. As long as, I saw earlier today, a Russian ship had accidentally shot a Japanese-owned ship in the Black Sea.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, fuck, man. Like, that's the shit that will get everybody drawn into this world war.
Yeah,
some
because
fucking mistake.
Yeah, they do something to one of our NATO partners, and it's what is it, Article 5? We're obligated to
or 4 or 5
to get involved. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I someone said yesterday or today, I think I saw that they're going to include major cyber attacks under that also. So if there's like a major cyber attack on Finland, then now we are obligated to step in. And I don't know if that means like through cyber or if that means like, hey, I don't know. The whole thing's crazy. Putin pretty much said he's willing to use nukes at the beginning. He didn't say that, but like, saying that whoever messes with us will see something they've never seen in their times is kind of.
I think that could be nukes, but I think it could more likely be cyber stuff. But here's the main problem. Well, one of the problems with this cyber stuff, and again, trust issues. Okay, so, the major cyber attack happens. Someone says it was Russia. Well, okay. How do I know? Mm-hmm. How do I know who did it? That's the type of thing where you could basically, and this is the false flags things. Like, we're accusing Russia of using false flags to precipitate invasion of Ukraine. They didn't end up doing that, but like we've done that. Okay, so this is a game that countries play or that the intelligence community plays. So it's like if there was someone else that would benefit by it looking like Russia did a cyber attack, that's something you could easily do. You could easily cyber attack yourself, right? If you wanted a reason to go do something. I'm not saying us, I'm saying anybody. Mm-hmm. It's hard. Like, these are things that we're in a post-truth era with our media. And so you're kind of left to try to build a worldview out of these little pieces of people that are lying to you constantly and manipulating you. So it's very, now, thank God we're all the way over here in America and I'm not in Poland or something wondering like how bad this is all going to get, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. For media wise, I've been getting a lot of my shit off Twitter. You know, I'm on Twitter constantly. Yeah. I go on Snapchat and zoom in on like the geolocations of those areas and pull up Snapchat videos of what's going on. Cause you can tell, you know, I was doing the same thing when everything was going on in Kabul. You can zoom in on the map of Kabul and see, you know,
you just get people.
Yeah,
you
don't have
driving
to be, like,
by their account or okay,
no,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, if you have your account, if you haven't changed your account settings on Snapchat, I think it automatically is like that. But if you tag somewhere or a certain location, you can just look in that area and see all the Snapchats from that area. So you'd see all these Afghan people like driving by, filming Taliban and shit like that. Like, it's crazy, man. I was thinking about it earlier. I was like, this has got to be crazy for the intel guys out there that are just flooded right now with all this open source intelligence plus whatever other shit that they're gathering and stuff like that, like trying to sort through everything to figure out what's bullshit, what's not. You know, I don't know, it's
crazy. It's pretty unprecedented right now.
Yeah, man. So anyways, back to your career. When you left, you decided to move away from your normal Marine infantryman and move over into the recon community. What was like the driving factor behind that? I know you said on the last episode, again, people could check that out. It's episode 126. You said that you were going to get out and go contracting, which is something I could see, getting big again here in a little bit. You were going to get out and go contracting, but you said that you would go and do the NDOC one time, and if you passed it, you'd stay in, and if not, you get out and go do contracting. What was that like? Okay, what gave you that feeling like I got to try at least once,
Well, because I'd already gotten out of the Marines once. So I did, 6 years, and then I got out. And while I was out, I didn't know that I would ever come back in. And I'd always had this thing in my mind. I'm like, I would pretend like I didn't think the recon stuff was cool. Because back then it was like competitive between the sniper community and recon. So I would like talk shit, like I would be like, those dudes, Ricky Recon, and I'm trying to go swimming or whatever. I had like whatever dumb shit you say, right? But really, I was like, man, that stuff looks pretty kind of cool. Like, but I had it in my mind. Well, I wasn't a swimmer. Like, I grew up in a city. I like passed like whatever in boot camp so that you pass, but I didn't have a skill set in swimming. So I kind of let that be the reason why I never tried. I was like, well, I can't swim. Those guys are insane. Like, they got to be a fish. I'm not a fish. So I'll just stay on the land over here. But I had a buddy at sniper when I was saying, a couple of guys I worked with at sniper school were like McQuiss, guys from being in the fleet. They became Marine Corps water instructor of survival and swimming or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But one of them, just basically, the guy I was working with was like, dude, just sign up for CWSS, which is like one rank lower than McQuiss. He told me this. He said, if you go to CWSS and then McQuiss, you'll never have a problem with any swimming again in your life. I'm like, just like that. And he's like, yeah. So he worked with me for a week in the pool on Camp Pendleton to get it so I could like pass the in-test to go to those schools. And he was 100% right. I did that, and I went from not being able to swim to, by the time those two schools were over, it's like a month worth of training or something. I never had an issue again. So
that's a miserable month right there. That's a miserable month in the
kind
pool,
of. Right? Yeah, kind of. But after CWSS, I learned the techniques pretty well. It wasn't that hard. And it's some of it was miserable, but also some of it was a lot of like swimming and running all day. Like, it's hard for me to like.
I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds like misery
compared to like my life of drudgery and sitting in an office and under fluorescent lights and shit right now. That sounds like paradise. Like, all I have to do is run all day, swim all day, and like, I don't know. I thought a lot of it was fun because I was a real strong runner, and there was a lot of running in McQuist for some reason. So I was like, all right, I'm not that strong in the pool, but I can make up for it on the land here. And actually, once you get the techniques and stuff down, it's pretty, like, come to find out, swimming's mostly technique. Like,
yeah,
it's mostly technique. So once you get the techniques and stuff, I enjoyed it, and so that's what gave me the confidence to be like, you know what, maybe I could pass this NDOC. You know, I might as well give it a shot. So
even with that training, did you find it to be difficult when you actually got to BRC going through the pool phase?
No, just it was difficult just because they make it. It's like anything else. Like, they're not going to let you win, you know, type of thing. So it was difficult in that they just torture you a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But meeting the standard for the only thing that you have to pass for a standard is the, you know, some of the pool stuff to pass the in test for VRC. You have to do a 25-meter underwater crossover, 500-meter swim in a certain amount of time, maybe a couple other little things. But beyond that, it's just the fins. So the open ocean finning, where you're, you know, generally you're in a utility uniform with a rucksack and fins, and you have to make it from point A to point B in a certain amount of time. And you have, like, you know, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 or 10 or something graded, and you have to maintain an average. So that's what you can get. That's the only swimming thing you can, like, get dropped for there. And that was no problem at all.
Yeah,
so the only thing hard about it was just
open water finning, man. That sounds fucking rough. How many guys have a problem with that? Because, you know, for reference, this is your second or third phase, right? When you're doing the finning, pools phase is the first phase.
We did do the finning towards the end, like, but
because you're down at Coronado and stuff, right?
Yeah, you start at Coronado. Well, the whole thing's on Pendleton. They have like they don't do it at Coronado anymore. The whole thing's at Pendleton, or they maybe come down for amphib, but they don't live at Coronado for the course. But
gotcha.
When I went, we did, and swimming wasn't the last thing though. It was because we did all the field and patrolling and stuff at the end. But, you know, towards the, like, middle of the thing, we're doing all the swimming, but it was freezing. Like, it was like February or something, so that sucked. Being cold. Yeah, being cold.
A lot of people don't like getting in the ocean at all. You guys are going in the water and swimming kilometers, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the thing is, like, having already been in the Marines for like a decade by the time I went to that school, a lot of the stuff that, like, would have, I don't know how well I would have done in that school if I'd have went as like a PFC or Lance Corporal, because some of those kids are just so, like, overwhelmed. They don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
You know, they've only been in the Marines for, like, long enough to go to infantry school, and now they're swimming in the ocean, towing a ruck, someone's screaming at them. You know, it's just a lot. You know, and like, and then my perspective back then was screwed up. I'd be a lot nicer now, I think, but I was the class leader because I was the senior NCO that was a student, and I had no pity or empathy for any of these kids. You know, they just, any kind of weakness, I'm like, dude, there's a war on, you're a bitch, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, you could be, you know, driving down around Tampa, waiting to get blown off the side of the road right now. Don't complain. You know, I was like wound a little tight, you know. So I was like,
yeah. And for those that haven't listened to the previous, you know, podcast, you, at this point, you'd already done multiple deployments. You'd already been you went from sniper instructor school. You were a sniper instructor to BRC, right?
Yes.
Do you think that had part of it because you were an instructor previously for a very difficult school, you know, very renowned school?
Yeah.
So when you come over here and people are like, "Hey, Sergeant," well, and you're just like, "Fuck you."
Yes.
You know?
Well, and I tried to, when I would try to, like, mentor some of these kids a little bit, but some of them didn't understand that once they got done with all their schools and they got into recon, they were, and this isn't to denigrate anybody or anything. I think the Marine infantry, I rate them like the highest, you know, possible thing, but they didn't understand that where they were going to end up working was going to be better for them than if they quit and ended up in the grunts. Mm-hmm. And that was proven to be true. One of the kids that quit during RIP, like the Recon Indoctrination program, it's like a month you do pre-BRC. One of those kids that quit during that, while we were in BRC, got killed in Iraq.
Oh,
you know, so it's
no
like,
way.
yeah, and that hit some of those kids pretty hard. I'm like, hey, look, you know, not that not that being in recon's necessarily safer or anything like that, but my point was like, look, you know, you might as well get into the best unit you can get into, get the best training, the best equipment, the best missions, because you end up in the infantry, nobody gives a fuck about you, man. Like, it's a different whole thing. Like, you're not a, you know, and again, of course, I love the grunts. I spent a decade there, but I'm just trying to tell these kids, but you can't really tell people. Like, they just don't know, you know, so they can't, it's hard to tell.
The people around you obviously care about you and shit, but in the higher echelons of the command, you're just another number on the roster.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It has to be that way. You can't.
It has to be
another way. It has to be that way.
You're talking about when the infantry battalion deploys, a BLT deploys, when they're reinforced, they're going with over 1,000 people. So it's like, how is the commander going to really care about Lance Corporal Schmuck that he's never even met before? You're just another number. Whereas on a recon team, you guys all know each other. You know, everybody's like, it's like that little club, and it's smaller, so it's easier to get to know the people around you. And I agree with you, man. If you're going to go, if it's like, hey, I'm going to combat, like this is for real, two-way shooting range, I want to be with the people that want to be there, that have trained the best, shoot the best, have the best equipment. You know, that's definitely an incentive for that, for sure.
Yeah.
So once you finish BRC, you're in recon. You know, what was next? Were you going for schools, or were there deployments coming up? Like, what was that all about?
Yeah. So I got what ended up happening was I got to a fourth platoon, First Force Recon, and the platoon sergeant was a guy that had been one of my students at sniper school, and so he knew I was coming. You know, they had me on the list of people that were coming from BRC. He saw my name, knew who I was, and he's like, "Oh, I know this guy," and he knew that He knew that he wanted me to do sniper stuff in his platoon. So the way that Force Recon was organized back then, the platoon, they call it a DAS, or Direct Action Special Reconnaissance. So you've got one half of the platoon, or more than half, but one block of the platoon is focused on doing direct action, so the CQB stuff. Now, everybody goes to the CQB training and all that, but those are the guys who are, task organized to do that. And then you've got Special Reconnaissance, which will have a free fall team and a dive team. Right. So those are the guys that are going to do all the reconnaissance stuff, all the snooping and pooping, taking pictures, being on target before the direct actions guys get there, shooting sniper, precision fires in support of that, doing the, controlling air and artillery, all that kind of stuff happens with the SR guys. Right. So he knew, my background being a sniper, and having already been to airborne school, they didn't have to spend a quota on that. So I go straight to free fall school. So, and that was back then, that was kind of a big deal, because there was a lot of guys who'd been at Force Recon for 3-4 years and hadn't got a chance to go to free fall school yet. So some of the guys were pissed because they're like, "Who's this new dickhead? Just shows up and gets a free fall school right off the bat," that type of thing. But that's what ended up happening. So I got into the military free fall stuff pretty big. Right away, it's go to free fall school, which is an Army school back then. Marine Corps has its own now. We do our own free fall thing, but or
not Yuma, right outside that area.
Not Yuma. Right? That's where it's shit. I can't remember now, but it's because the Marine Corps has different parachute systems than the Army does now. We have they have a multi-mission parachute system. It requires different training. Mm-hmm. So it used to be though that you go to military free fall, the Army one. Then you graduate that, and then you have to do another month-long course to transition to this multi-mission parachute system. So that's a lot of jumping. And then you get in a team, and you do jump packages that are just for your team or whatever. So in short order, within months, I had 100 jumps, 100 free or ish, which is a lot for
anyone. That's a lot for anyone, let alone one dude within a couple months. That's crazy.
Yeah, so
when you come out of school, for people that don't know, you come out of that school certified, right? Was it a Class C, skydiving license,
you mean
or something like that?
Yep. You get you can go. You come out of there with you have to do the paperwork and pay the shit or whatever. But yeah, you have done all the jumps required to get a parachute license. So just like dive school, you leave there with a PADI license. Yeah. Same thing. You leave free fall school with a little thing. And and a lot of guys get into it. They'll buy a rig and start jumping on the weekends and all that kind of stuff. I never did until I never got into it as a hobby probably just because I didn't have the, I was married at the time and I didn't have money, but I thought I wanted to get into it a few years ago, so I bought like a amazing rig and all that kind of stuff, and then within like a year I sold it to one of my buddies. So like,
oh, really?
Yeah, I thought I needed a hobby, but I'm like, I got a kid, I can't be
fucking jumping out,
flinging myself out of airplanes and shit.
I got a buddy who does it, and he loves it, man. He's the same. He cool. He got his license as a recon guy, and he bought his own rig. I think he paid like $1,500 or whatever for some parachute.
Oh, he got one cheap then.
Well, I think he knew a guy, so he got a good deal on a good one. And he's like, dude, once you have the parachute, he's like, I just pay for lift tickets. He goes, I show up and it's $20 to go, or $25 to go jump out of a plane. Whereas, you know, for the weekend jumper, you got to pay for the instructor that's coming up with you. You got to pay for
it's not bad once you have your own rig. It's not bad, but I like when I think about the MFF, the free fall stuff. It's the most like, I don't know how you like describe it, like the most kind of like stereotypically cool guy like thing to do, right? So, and then you get used to it or whatever, but it was not lost on me. Like the first time, at free fall school, you start towards the end, you start doing these, like they call them wall locker jumps, where it's like everything in your wall locker, right? But full combat equipment on O2, right? Because you're going to be up at altitude, jumping with a bunch of other dudes at night. You know what I mean? And you're like, the ramp opens, and I'm like, oh, this is the first time I felt like I'm really doing like some like cool guy shit. You know what I mean? Like up until that point, all the cool guy shit I was doing was mostly just suffering. It's like carry 100-pound pack up the side of that mountain. Then when you get there, lay in the dirt and look at stuff with binos for 3 days, and then a helicopter is going to pick you up. You know what I mean? Like at no point does that feel glamorous. You know, it
sounds cool when you're telling the story, but in the moment it sucks,
right? But the jumping, I'm like, this is cool. And of course, the military can suck the fun out of everything. But what they can't suck out of jumping is, I don't care who you are, you're a little bit freaked out every time. Most dudes will be that, but that's why you like it. That's why it's cool. Like you're like, there's a bunch of different ways this could very easily go wrong and I die. You're like, it doesn't take much. You're like, some pin gets stuck somewhere, or I didn't check this shit, or something gets wrapped around my foot, or I spaz out and I forget. Because the other interesting thing about this shit is you learn these emergency procedures, and it's the military, so it's like safety, right? So every time you jump, you do this jump brief, and you go over all the procedures. If this happens, then that. This kind of like, flow chart of catastrophes, right? Like pull ripcord, this doesn't happen, then do this. You do this, and that doesn't happen, then do this, right? All great when you're standing there, but when I've had 3 parachute malfunctions that resulted in a cutaway with a reserve ride or whatever. Oh my
God, that's got to be sketchy.
Well, it's not exactly like when you're just standing there, like, but you do think you're like, what are you supposed to do if you're like falling towards the ground and you're like, okay, this, then that, fuck, I hope this is the right, what order does this go in? Pull this, it's, you know what I mean? So especially after you have one of those, then you go jump again. You're like, you've experienced it going south on you, and you're like, but that part of that is like fucking cool. You're like, it's I don't know.
The first time you had a malfunction and you had to do a cutaway, when you got to the ground, were you like, Jesus Christ?
I got in trouble. They were mad at me. So it was during the transition course for that multi-mission parachute system. Mm-hmm. It has this thing, I fucking forget some of the nomenclature, but it has a drogue parachute. So, and there's different ways you can set the drogue, but the way we were doing it in this particular thing, it's like, I think we're jumping out and then you set the drogue, like it's a hand deployed pilot chute, right? So you set the drogue, and this is the first time I'd ever like flown under a drogue, and they told us, they're like, hey, it's going to feel weird. You might kind of buff it like this a little bit, but they said you should be able to turn and like see the drogue parachute or like touch it, you should be able to verify that it's there, and it might like feel weird, Well, I get out, I set the drogue, and I'm flying really weird. Like my head is like down at an angle, and it's like freaking me out. And I turn and I can't see the thing and I can't touch it, but I also forgot that I'm a stubby little fucker. Like I have short little arms and a little stubby torso. So it was just that I was freaking myself out. Like I was flying weird. It felt weird. I couldn't see the thing. So I didn't think the drogue was there. or I just didn't know what was going on. And then it has this thing called the golf ball, which is how you release the drogue. You pull on this golf ball thing, and it releases the drogue, and it pulls your parachute out. Well, they tell you if you pull on that golf ball, and it doesn't work, you're supposed to like pin your arm to your side and then really wrench on it. And then if that doesn't work, you go through your cutaway procedures. Well, I tried like one time, and it wouldn't go easily. And I immediately just kind of spazzed out. I'm like, well, I knew that fucking drogue wasn't there. I knew this was fucked up. And now in my mind, I'm like getting to where I need to like make a decision. So I kind of was like, yeah, this shit isn't working. And I deployed my reserve, right? So fine, I get on the ground, and they come like screaming over in the truck because they see what the fuck's going on. They're like, and then they're like, the ground crew's like talking to me, and I'm telling them my story, and they're like looking at my parachute system that's on the ground. They're like, now you just spazzed out, dude. You owe us beer. You owe us a case of beer. So if you activate your reserve, you owe whoever packed it like a case of beer or whatever. They're like, you're just a dumbass. Like you spazzed out, dude. You owe beer. I'm like, okay.
Man, no way. I'd say, hey, take whatever precautions you got to do when you're at 10,000 feet hurtling towards the ground.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, that's crazy. See, you were so on those same lines of stuff you did in the military that you do on the outside. Do you ever do precision marksmanship at all anymore? Do you shoot long range or anything like that?
No. To be honest with you, I when it came to shooting and then like kind of dorking out on, in order to be a competitive long range shooter, it's like a whole thing. It's not just your marksmanship skills. That almost is kind of like very little to do with it. It's mostly your mastery of ballistics, your understanding of the different loads. All those guys reload their own ammo. It's all about like the rifle build, the different ammo. It's about knowing the environmental conditions to the point where you can spot wind and call wind like a wizard. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I was a competent, shooter. Like I could get it done, no problem. Like I, passed sniper school and all that business. But like when I worked at sniper school, I taught mission planning, right? So we had guys that I worked with that were ballistics and physics. These are guys that can they're writing these complicated physics, math problems on the wall. It's like they're deep in it and they're dorked out. And mm-hmm. A couple of the guys I worked with are in it to this day in the precision shooting industry. Like they work for companies that, make these guns and they compete in all those competitions and everything. I just never did because I just wasn't that into it. Yeah. And then I never even had any guns or anything till I ended up in North Carolina. Now I have a pretty good. I'm not like a big gun guy, I'm kind of like they were tools for work, and that's about as far as I went with it.
You're a casual user. I think the guys
user. Casual user, and now I have them really for defense. I don't it's not a hobby for me to shoot and stuff. So
I feel bad that I don't go shoot more. You know what I'm saying? Like
expensive.
It's fucking soup, dude. I'm in California. God, you don't even know. God. But there's guys out there that are like, oh, if you're not shooting every week, man, you're fucking rusty. You're not gonna be able to employ the weapon. And I'm like, man, I'm not shooting every week. Like I just can't afford that shit for sure. You're right. You're right though. There are dudes that nerd out hard on guns, and you can't it's like it's almost like a guy that's really into cars. You can't even have a conversation with some dudes because they're like, "Oh, you don't know about this?" Why are you even talking to me about this? Like you don't even know my level.
It's definitely when it comes to guns and optics and stuff. Like dudes will get in these whole beefs about and now the stuff that these guys have these days. I was at work. They work at MARSOC as a contractor. They had a static display thing going on about a week ago where they were just kind of some big muckety muck 3-star was coming to sniff butts at MARSOC or whatever. So they made a static display. So I wander over to this thing, and I couldn't even I'm pointing at I'm talking to this dude, this sergeant. I'm like, what is that, dude? He's like, oh, it's a multi-caliber. They have these sniper systems where they can take out the 308 bolt, and they have a 338 Lapua, one chassis, but various different loads that can go in it. Also, they're wild shit. Amazing optics where I wouldn't know how to even zero the scope. I'm like, I would need to go back to sniper school or something. I don't know what any of this shit is.
The increase in quality of optics has been awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just going when I first checked into 10th Marines as a 08, using Steiner fucking binoculars, out there with my Steiner binoculars and my compass.
Steiner's a pretty good glass.
Hey man, I'll tell you what, those fucking binoculars are awesome. You grow to love them. You're like, this thing, you can throw it around if you need to. You can beat it up. Like
when they came out with the black ones, I can't remember the nomenclature. They came out with these black ones that replaced the Steiners.
Mm-hmm.
I got pissed because I'm like nostalgic about the Steiners, man. Like I don't know. I spent so much time with my face behind a pair of Steiners that I'm like, oh yeah, nah, these are the shit.
Are you talking about the image stabilization ones?
No, those are awesome.
Those are awesome.
The Canon, the where you push the button. And
yeah.
Those are amazing.
We got those when we got to Afghanistan, and that was the first time I saw them, and I'm like,
yeah, those are part of the
fucking sick.
Keyhole. You know why you got those in Afghanistan? Keyhole optics suite. Yeah. So the first contracting gig I worked for JIDO, JIDO was who was giving everybody those keyhole optics kits and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole point of that, for people that don't know, is JIDO. You don't want to explain what JIDO is?
Yeah, JIDO. It had went through some name changes previously, but it was basically the Joint Improvised Threat, Joint IED Defeat Organization. And so once we started to wrap our minds around the victim-operated IED threat, started in a big way in Iraq, but we're talking about mostly anti-vehicle IEDs. But when we got to Afghanistan and we started dealing with the victim-operated threats, so the pressure plates and all that kind of stuff, JIDO's got a huge budget. Like at its heyday, it was congressionally funded 2 years in advance. So it's basically they had this huge pot of money that for 2 years, like normally the procurement process and stuff for DoD spending is like you have to have this competitive bidding thing going on. It takes years to get any new thing fielded. Mm-hmm. They had this huge pot of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars, that they could spend immediately to save. Basically, their mandate was attack the IED threat network. So that's why you ended up having a big like intel organization as part of JIDO, but also protect our servicemen from these threats using material. So they started buying. That's where your MRAPs come from. That's where the mine detectors, counter battery radar systems, all of this funded with JIDO money. And some of that ended up being stuff for the individual user. So that keyhole optics kit, amazing binos in there, laser rangefinders, thermal sights.
Mm-hmm. They had the edge detection on some of the sites too, so you could use that to try to find like pull string IEDs or the edges of pressure plates and stuff. I use the long range thermal viewer, the LRTV, constantly. Anytime we were in our vehicles, the long range thermal viewer was in there with me, because anytime we'd stop, it was like, hey, are we going to be here for more than 10 minutes? We are? Okay, I'm going to get on the rooftop. Are we going to be here for more than 30 minutes? All right, I'm going to bust out the LRTV or something, if I got it with me.
Yeah.
Just because that thing, I mean, again, the optics going from Steiner binos, which are great, but when you bust out the LRTV and zoom way in on something, in color or whatever, you're like, holy shit, this is crazy.
So since we're dorking out on gear stuff right now, let me tell you what else I saw the other day over there. And now I saw unclassed stuff. I'll be vague or whatever, but the amount of remote operated stuff that these dudes have now is insane. Mm-hmm. They have about 10 different types of either quadcopter type drones or fixed wing drones. They have some that are this big, like about 2.5 inches long, that look like a little helicopter that they use in interior.
That's crazy.
They have drones. They have quadcopter drones that dump out other little drones. You know what I mean? Like a swarm of drones.
I knew that was coming. I didn't know that was already there.
Dude, they have. You seen the Boston Dynamics dog thing?
Yeah.
The Marines have that.
Yeah.
Marines have a dog. They can mount a sniper rifle on this thing, and send it out into the wood line and shoot precision fires from it.
That's fucking.
They have drones that you shoot out of a 203. That once it's up there, it turns into a drone. Grenade launcher drone that they can fly. They got 120 millimeter mortars that loiter and that they can fly around.
Fuck, dude. It's getting weird out there, man.
Dude, if you saw the shit that these guys have right now and you just map that over your experience in Afghanistan, I was looking at all this stuff. I'm like, oh, dude, they have a drone, like a big quadcopter one that they can tether. So it's like the power cable and the data cable, like they can plug it in. So it sits above their. You remember those blimps and shit they had in Afghanistan?
Mm-hmm. PGSS.
with the cameras on them and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if you had basically your own one so like they can tether this drone so it doesn't it's not limited to like 30 minutes of flight time or whatever. They can send that bitch. Yeah. So they got their own basically like static defense with amazing FLIR cameras on it and shit. They have one that's a snake. It looks like a snake and it moves like a snake.
That's
and
crazy.
It's to get like underneath shit and in tunnels and everything. It like looks and moves like a snake, but it's cameras on it. It's crazy.
This is shit that I thought was becoming, but I didn't think was there. Especially like the swarm drones and stuff. We had the little what do they call them? Throwbots there was a little robot with two wheels that you throw over the wall and we had those. We never really used it. We never used it too much. We liked using our mast antenna or our mast mounted camera on our
the MATV
MRAP or whatever to like peek up over the walls and shit if we were going into a compound or if we're going into even an Afghan patrol base just to see what was going on. That's
the one thing we didn't have. Like we use the SOF uses the RG-33, the RG-32 and RG-33 vehicle, which are great because they've got. We call it kill TV. It's like you don't have an exposed gunner. It's everybody's inside and you have a RW remote weapon system.
Yeah.
So no exposed gunner, but we don't have that mast thing you're talking about.
That was becoming more of a thing like towards my last deployment. Those remote mounted weapons. My whole thing on that was like, man, that kind of sucks because the gunner is a really good. Like, hey, shots are coming from that direction. But if you're not up in the turret, how do you know? Like, you can't hear, where some of the I don't know.
They had a system. I don't know how well it works.
Shot
that system
that
tells you like, it has a thing. It'd be like, but once there's a whole lot of shooting going on, like that thing can't discriminate. 300 degrees that way, 600, whatever. Like,
it's nice having someone that's actually like heads up on the battlefield. Like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Feeding that to you rather than through the camera. The cameras are great and stuff, but you lose a little bit. Kind of like if you wear a headset. I always wore my Peltor headset. You kind of lose a little bit of SA with that too, situational awareness with that too, because you don't know where the shots come from if you hear a shot.
It used to drive me crazy. You can relate to this, but like the deployment I did where I was doing JTAC stuff, we'd make these movements from Fob Robinson up to like Sangin District Center, Musakala or wherever we're going. And if and when we had coverage on that thing, trying to do any of that from inside a closed up vehicle, it just drive me. I'm not even talking about controlling drops or anything. I just couldn't stand. Like I'm just inside a closed vehicle looking at a video scout. Trying to do. It's like I want to like because also I was not like. Dude, it was like one of my jobs, right? So it's like I want to see, you know what I mean? Like, I wanna, if I'm gonna be doing anything with these aircraft, like I want to be able to see, I want it to be like when I'm on the hill training, where I can like
look around and see everything coming in. It's almost like doing controls or doing work from COC from command center.
That's tough too. I've never done any of that. I've seen people do that, but I've never really type 3 or whatever, right? Like is it 3?
Type 2.
2, yeah, okay.
Type.
I've never. Yeah.
It's not. I mean, I guess what you have to do is if you're doing controls, like for those that don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about talking to the aircraft and telling them they can drop a bomb on a target. If I'm working with an aircraft and I'm not actually out on the battlefield, I'm in a command center and I'm watching like a USR or ISR feed and looking at a map. You just have to trust everybody's doing what the fuck they're supposed to be doing. You know what I'm saying? And I was always like...
And they're where they say they are.
And I always gave people the benefit of the doubt. And I'm always like, hey, man, this pilot says he's here, or I told him to be over here, so I expect he's going to be over there. And I remember trying to do, like, combined arms sometimes. We always want, hey, if we're going to bring in air, might as well bring in artillery as well. And I remember, trying to do, like, artillery or IDF, any kind of mortars, whatever. And someone would be like, well, is that safe? Are they outside of this buffer? Maybe we should push them out a little bit farther or change the timing. And I'm like, look, dude... If everybody does what they're supposed to be doing, it's safe. Why are we adding extra safeties just to be,
What they say, big sky, little bullet, or whatever.
Big sky, little bullet, baby. What's the odds? You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to do anything dangerous. I'm not gonna put anybody in a dangerous situation. But if if you tell me, one thing was in training that we'd always do, we'd have in the impact area, you have what's called a safety box. So they draw out like a safety box on the map. And that's where it's like a buffer inside the impact area that all the rounds have to land into that. So if you miss the safety box, you're still in the impact area. And we would get missions. Our observers would call in a mission. We'd send it up, and then the fire direction control, the FDC, would come back and be like, hey, it's denied. It's on the edge of the safety box. And we're like, well, on the inside edge or the outside edge? Because if it's in this fucking safety box,
is it in or not? Yeah.
Yeah, it's kicking chalk, bro. It's in. Like, it's a fucking impact area. Anyways, why are we being stupid about this? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's safe or it's not safe. You can't say this is the safety line, but because of my own insecurities, I'm also going to add another 100 meters to that buffer, because if everybody, that's how you get like gunny time. Well, we're here at 4 a.m. because Gunny told us.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, because 15 people had their
15 minutes.
Yeah, man, it's just, I don't know. It's, I don't know. It's just a weird thing, when people want to add all those safety. I don't know how we went down this road of that.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about gear and stuff. But
we were talking about doing controls from the command center. So it's just a trust thing. It's a trust thing that what I'm seeing. One is verifying. Like I remember on the last episode, I talked about doing a HIMARS call for fire in Marja, and a big thing with that is I'm looking at Google Earth or looking at whatever mapping program. PissOff is what we would use. I'd be looking at my PissOff software, and I'm looking at that image, and I'm looking at the ISR feed. And I'm going, okay, that's the Carez that he's standing next to. I'm verifying, am I right?
Yeah.
I'll admit, one time I was a little off. My last HIMARS call for fire in Afghanistan, we were watching these 3 guys, I think it was, putting in an IED. And I'm like, that's exactly what happened. I was like, okay, it looks like they're next to this Carez, which for those that don't know what that is, it's like a hole in the ground. It's like a well. It's like where their water ran. And I was like, probably 50 meters, 75 meters off. And just couldn't tell because the imagery was a little out of date compared to, what I'm actually seeing from the PGSS, the blimp. And send the mission. It gets approved. The CO or the OPSO or whatever is like, hey, it's approved. We're like, hey, approved, fire, target number, whatever. And then because of HIMARS, it's got to shoot. It's coming from however far away. So it's going to take probably a minute or maybe a little bit longer to get to the target. It's approved, fire, target number, whatever. It shoots, rockets in the air, and then the guy starts walking away. And I'm like, fuck, like, we're going to miss him, like shit. And the there's two dudes. They were walking away from each other like that. And I'm like, God damn it. It's going to hit right in between them. Like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden, boom, and just landed right on top of one of the guys. I was like, everybody's like, dude, you hit a moving target. And I'm like, it's whatever. I'm like, I'm trying to play it off. Like, but pro, man.
I let it a little bit.
I knew that was going to happen. But then when I looked at it, I was like, holy shit, I'm glad that really worked out because he was a little off there. But that's the hard part. That's how targeting becomes like an issue. And having optics and having all the different technologies and stuff, I can't imagine what they're working with nowadays, especially in the SOCOM community.
Yeah, they're all running ATAC. They got a situational awareness stuff going on where they can, on a little droid tablet, they're looking at all their other friendly positions. They can populate 9 lines on those things and blast them up to aircraft and stuff. It's a lot of the stuff's pretty automated.
Yeah, that was where we were trying to get to because we initially started using PFIV and then it was PFIV was the first iteration and then it was called Kill Switch. And then ATAC came in, and it's a kind of a similar program. I think it's from a different company, but it has almost all the same shit as Kill Switch plus a few other things. And I think it was better for the SOCOM community because it had some stuff for jumpers and stuff in there too. It had some like you could do drop zones.
Dudes jump. Yep.
Yeah, so people started using that, and man, it's a fucking awesome tool. One thing that we had a problem with was guys would want to rely on that, and it's like, bro. Your tablet goes down. Where's your fucking map? Do you have GRGs of the area? Do you have a fucking map? Like, because that thing can fucking die. It's a piece of electronic 100%. Equipment. Yeah, man. I don't know. When you were in Recon, you guys obviously get a lot of good gear to accomplish the missions that you guys have there. Did you see a big difference when you went to MARSOC from the gear that you had at Recon to compare to the gear you had at MARSOC? Because there's 2 different pots of money. One's from the Marine Corps and one's from SOCOM.
Yeah, there's a pretty big difference because you're as a SOCOM unit, there's programs for everything, right? So what's the program? I can't remember the acronym for it, but there's a program of record for all the soft weapon systems.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's where you get your basic, like your M4 platform and SOP mod, special SOPMOD. So like soft mod or soft mod, something like that. So, but then there's weapon systems available to MARSOC that don't exist for the regular Marine Corps. So you're getting like different machine guns. We got like a Mark 48 machine gun, for example, which is like a SAW, but it's 7.62. So you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. Some of that kind of stuff, a lot of the radios, and then more abundance of the thing. So like at Recon, everybody had a M-biter, for example, right? You get to MARSOC and it's like there's enough 150 radios for everybody. So it's like, the stuff that was a constrained resource at MARSOC or at Recon was more abundant at MARSOC. And then you're kind of, because you're participating in these SOCOM programs of record, whereas in the Marine Corps, everything you wanted to add or get, was a whole shit fight to get them. Like if you identified some new piece of equipment at Recon, which did happen, it was just difficult to get it through the process and everything.
Yeah, open purchases wasn't like necessarily an easy thing to do. Yeah.
And then there's just a lot. There's more money for like training and for travel and for. It's not necessarily the gear. It's just all the money holistically in total. So it's like not it's a little more tight now probably, but in the heyday of us working up to go on these Afghanistan deployments, money wasn't a big issue. So it was like, hey, we're going to take our MSOT to New Mexico, just us, to go do this training we're going to do for a month or whatever. And it's kind of like, yeah, right, like blank check almost a little bit, like within reason, but like,
yeah, as long as you can justify, like, hey, this is what we're doing.
And then, at a regular unit, like there's a budget, like, you can only send so many guys to so many schools because there's only so much money for it. At MARSOC, it's not like that. It's like, what's the training that's required? Go to it. It's like, go get the training done that you need done.
You're not working with limited money. You're working with limited time more than anything to try to do everything.
And it's different now. Some of those budgets have been, they're challenged now these days because the budgets have shrunk a little bit. But for a time there, it was pretty, money and gear and stuff was kind of falling from the sky.
GWAT, man, the whole GWAT was going on. Audits weren't happening of supply sections and stuff. I'm sure a lot of people signed up on stuff that probably didn't fully have everything that they signed off on and everything.
Plus, this might blow your mind a little bit. Every SOF team, when they're deployed, they get an op fund. So you just take an MSOT, right? So Marine Special Operations team, you've got kind of, depending, but let's call it 20 dudes, right? So 20 guys are out at whatever their location is in Afghanistan. Well, depending on what their mission requirements were and what exactly they were into, it was generally about $30,000 a month.
Wow.
It's like your fund for. Now there's rules about like what you can buy, but it was like, it's like, hey, use this money to build up your FOB basically out there, or to do, whatever these projects are, whatever. But like, there's no, like the regular Marine Corps, they're not sending you out into the desert with $30,000 a month and telling you to make yourself comfortable. They're like, no, this is your tent, dickhead. Dig a hole. Like, what do you mean money? Like, there's your MREs, there's your tent, there's water,
air conditioning. Get out of here.
Face outboard, hold security. Like, what are you doing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's pretty wild. You guys also have probably a lot more access to contractors too that can come in and help you with specialized gear, specialized training, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Yes. There's embedded contractors at the unit for some specific stuff, like some of the tech stuff, requires these contractor guys to be the SMEs because like nobody else has the time to like stay up on. There's a lot of gadgets being employed at in SOCOM units, so it's like there's always like gadget guys that are there, or guys that do like I do now. I still deploy with MARSOC or with SOCOM units, but I'm like a planner. I'm a planner for like a couple of very, very specific programs, and they keep guys like me around so that they don't have to pull guys out of the actual operational force to know all this like nerdy minutia about authorities, permissions, the special technical stuff or whatever. They got a guy for that. Like, go talk to Aaron. He's the dork for that.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to find the drone snake operator specialist and figure out how to drive that thing under fences and whatnot. Oh man! So when you were with MARSOC, when you got there, well, let's talk about what made you want to go from Recon to MARSOC. We never got into that. So what was the trigger to step into that next level arena?
It did not happen that way. So this is the way it went down. The Secretary of Defense told the United States Marine Corps, you will stand up a force provider unit for SOCOM. There will be Marines that are special operators. They will meet these, standards or whatever. And oh, by the way, we know you don't have those people right now, and we need them immediately. So you're going to start with these force recon dudes. So the Marine Corps and SOCOM waved a magic wand, and basically overnight, a bunch of us from 1st Force Recon and 2nd Force Recon, and then at the time it was, I think it was called SMTB, Special Missions. No, I'm sorry. There was like a FID unit. What did they call it? It eventually became 3rd Raider Battalion. So those of us at 1st Force became 1st Marine Raider. Well, not back then. It was called 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion. We weren't allowed to be called Raiders back then. So,
yeah, I remember all that drama. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it was like a whole big bunch of shit, right? So anyways, they go, you're going to stand up a Special Operations Command. So we had 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion in California. Then we had 2nd out at Camp Lejeune and 3rd also at Camp Lejeune. But 3rd was these guys that were doing foreign internal defense stuff. They were a lot of infantrymen and comm guys that were grandfathered in, But the ones that it made sense immediately to do was the 2nd and 1st Force guys because we had all the insert schools already.
Mm-hmm.
But that was it. And they didn't pick let's pick the best guys, or did nothing like that. It was literally like, who's not currently deployed, because there was one Force Recon platoon out with the MEU and another one in workup or whatever. So those guys were just not even considered, right? And so they said, okay, you batch of dudes right here, congratulations, you're now MARSOC.
You're the plank holder. That's sick, dude. That's cool.
It was cool. I was into it because I'm like, yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to be part of SOCOM. It's going to be better. But it caused a lot of consternation right off the bat because, guys, Recon Marines are pretty serious about being Recon Marines. And rightly so. Some of the senior guys are like, this is going to destroy. We were like stoked about it, but they're like, hey, dickheads, like they just destroyed the Marine Recon community. And they kind of did for a time being because 1st and 2nd Force Recon just went away. Now they eventually brought it back, but it just ceased to exist for a period of time, like close up furl the flag and go away. And then eventually they stood it back up as components of the Recon battalions. But we were separate and part of the MEF. We weren't at the way it was organized as first, let's take on the West Coast. You had 1st Recon Battalion, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, which was, which was its own thing. And then 1st Force Recon Company was a company at the MEF, not underneath Recon Battalion. Same dude, same MOS. Guys would kind of go, you could go back and forth between those units. You could be, a lot of times what happened is a guy would start his career. Yeah, he'd start his career at Recon Battalion, as a PFC, Lance Corporal, whatever, work his way up, get to, sergeant or whatever. You'd still have to take the NDOC, come over to Force. And then maybe by the time he's like a platoon sergeant, like a staff sergeant or a gunny, goes back over to 1st Recon to mentor, to go. And I think that is kind of how it is now. But yeah, so they waved their magic wand. It was pretty funny because our leadership, they didn't know what it was going to be like to be in SOCOM, necessarily. So I remember one of the things we were doing some training on Camp Pendleton. I think we were doing like a shooting package or something, and it's like a Friday. They're going to pull us in, right? And this is when our company commander is like, hey, look, they finally made the decision, as of this certain date, which was like 5 days in the future, basically next week, we are going to be this other unit called, 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion. We're like, okay, that's cool. Well, we were headed up to Hawthorne next week to start like about a 20-day training package out in the desert there. And they go, hey, look, everybody starting right now is on relaxed grooming standards. Nobody's shaving, and you can grow your hair out and grow a beard or whatever. You're no longer allowed to wear a uniform on Camp Pendleton if you're not within Marine standards. So just be wearing civvies. And we're like, oh, sweet, dude, this is awesome already. Dude, and I'm like kind of naive, I'm like, dude, this is how it's going to be. We're like, we don't have to wear uniforms anymore. We're just going to be these cool dudes with beards.
We get to bro
like,
out, man.
Shit. Dude, we get out to Hawthorne, and dude, we're out there growing beards, growing our hair out, acting like maniacs, doing whatever. And then like right before we're about to go back to Camp Pendleton, they're like, everybody needs to shave and get a good to go Marine Corps haircut immediately so we don't get fucking our dicks cut off by the kid. Like, they were wrong. They're like, I don't know who told them that we needed to be like but it turned out to be like not a good idea. So they're like, no, just go back to normal. Go back to Marine stuff.
Isn't it crazy how much time we waste on fucking haircuts and stupid shit like that?
Oh, dude.
Like, come on.
This is, you might not be surprised, but you might be surprised like how big of an issue that is at certain times at MARSOC, because it really is the case that a lot of the time you are in relaxed grooming standards. You do, like when we deploy in Afghanistan, like you're with a beard and shit, right? And there's dudes who work at MARSOC that are doing some external billets or some pretty specialized stuff where years go by and they don't, they don't do their work in military uniforms or whatever, right? But it's a specific thing. But what happens is guys, this is already happening anyways, but it's like guys are inclined to push the limits anyway. But then when they feel like they have an operational need to not look like a Marine, then it's like you can't get them to cut their hair and shit like that. Like, and I was kind of, and then how it is, like dudes in Southern California that want to like go off base and pretend they're not Marines type of shit. Those are all influencing these guys. But yeah, they, with maturity in time, like obviously it's less interesting to you whether or not you're allowed to have a beard or not have a beard or shave or whatever. Like, who cares? But like,
it's all stupid stuff. And I've definitely talked to a few guys that were at MARSOC, and they're like, bro, we'd be out doing some training evolution, and then we'd get fucking chewed out because we'd come back and PAO was out there and shot photos, and none of them were usable because our sleeves were cuffed up or my fucking boots weren't bloused. So now I can't put the sergeant major can't put any of those on the website because now we don't look professional anymore. And it's like, dude, really?
Well,
like,
so the Marine Corps is not dumb. So who do you think they send to MARSOC to be like the sergeant major and the first sergeants of all the companies?
That is a huge deal over there, right? That the MARSOC or Raider Battalion is the only SOCOM unit that doesn't have special operators in their key billets like that.
Yeah, it's and it has been a problem, like especially in a joint environment where you're, with these commands where like maybe you're in a siege of SOTF where the siege of SOTF's run by Green Berets or something, and they're used to like when they interface, like when you interface with a sergeant major from a special forces group, that dude's been a Green Beret for like 100 years. You don't know anything that dude doesn't know. You know what I mean? Like you're talking to a dude who's like
been around the world 20 times, like 30 years. Been all over. Yeah.
But you find a MARSOC sergeant major, you might be talking to a guy that's spent 20 years inflating tires at the fucking airfield. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what this dude is?
And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's probably not the guy that should be in charge of a unit of people. You got to understand the guys that you're working with, that you're supposedly running their administrative side of the house for them. If you don't understand their mission and what they're doing on a day-to-day, can you really be, the best advocate for their well-being or whatever it is that they're doing? I get it.
Well, so... Yeah, I mean, MARSOC's pretty good about. We got a lot of master guns dudes running around, a lot of E9s that really are the ones you're dealing with. The sergeant major is not down at the team level busting chops too much. He might send out a shitty email about don't park by the fucking thing or whatever. But dude, and it's kind of like, everyone has their encounters, but it's just like fun, as long as you have a sense of humor. Like I would love it. Like when I would get lit up, like if someone. Dude, whoever. If I would get lit up, it would like make my day. Like I would take the, yes, sergeant major, you got it. My bad, But I couldn't wait to like get back to the team room and be like, dude, I got lit up coming out of the PX. Smudge got me. You know what I mean? Like
got my hands in my pockets again. Yeah. Like a piece of shit. How are you gonna kill the enemy if you got your hands in your pockets, devil dog?
I love that shit.
So when you guys got put as the plank, when you guys became the plank holders, the first guys at MARSOC, this was after Det 1, right? You weren't part of Det 1?
No, this is after they shut that one down. But some of those Marines were in MARSOC. You know, like my oh no, he went. Yeah, no, my platoon sergeant was a Det 1 guy. My first team sergeant was a Det 1 guy.
Do you want to explain what that was, like Det 1 was, before we move on?
Yeah, so it was kind of this is right around I would say 2002, 2003 is when this thing stood up, and it was again like the Secretary of Defense. The Marine had been trying to get MARSOC to participate in SOCOM, and for years, decades actually, the Marine Corps' line was Marines are an elite combat force. We don't have Marines inside the Marine Corps that are more elite than others. We don't want Marines working as force provider for some component command that we don't control. So no, thank you. Finally, Secretary of Defense is like, you're gonna participate in a limited way. You're gonna stand up a unit, and as kind of like an experiment and see how it goes. So they call this guy Colonel Coates. This is actually kind of a cool story. So this guy, Colonel Coates, who all Recon Marines know him, him and this other guy, Colonel Powers, are like legends in the Recon community. These are dudes who like went and were paramilitary officers of CIA as Marines. You know what I mean? They went did a tour there. So kind of some real, clandestine type of background, but were just kind of like larger than life Recon officers, right? And they would run at various points. They had commands, like they were in charge of the SOTG, so Special Operations Training Group for the Marine Corps, all that kind of stuff. So they call Colonel Coates. They go, you're going to stand up this Marines, what's it called? Marine Detachment 1. So U.S. SOCOM Marine Det 1. So U.S. SOCOM Marine Det 1. And he's like, I want you to hand pick these guys. I want the best Recon Marines that you know of to be this thing. So he gets on the phone. He starts calling this guy, 06, starts calling, or maybe he's a lieutenant colonel. I think he was an 06. Though. Starts calling dudes. So a guy that I would eventually be in a team with was out of the Marine Corps selling used cars in Sacramento, waiting to start the Sheriff's Academy. So he had like a start date of the Sheriff's Academy. He's selling cars in Sacramento. Colonel Coates calls him on the phone and is like, hey, would you come back in the Marine Corps to work for me in a SOCOM unit? And he's like, yeah, I guess I would. And he's like, cool, you're going to Ranger School in 3 weeks. You need to get back in the – so within 3 weeks, this dude had to jump through all these hoops. This guy, Colonel Coates, greased the skids for dudes to do all this stuff. But he said within 3 weeks, he was at Fort Benning starting Ranger School from selling cars in Sacramento. So he had some pull, some sway to get guys into whatever. And he had these requirements. He's like, every operator will be a trained sniper and a graduate of the Ranger School. So anybody that wasn't already those things had to real quick go to school and get them. And that's how, when I was working at sniper school, their corpsmen showed up. They're like everybody, even the corpsmen. So we put a corpsman through sniper school, which we weren't even really allowed to do, but the Marine Corps is like, yeah, you're going to make an exception. We're like, okay. So they sent, they get all these guys trained up, and they go on a deployment to Iraq as part of a SEAL task unit. And they didn't get into too much. I think they worked the Ramadi area. This has been around maybe 2005, 2006 timeframe. Didn't get into too much, but what they did do was they were excellent. And so once everybody saw these guys work, that's all that the Secretary of Defense or whoever was making the decisions needed to be like, okay, cool, experiment over. We want Marines big time. We want a full command.
Now,
and that's how that all came to be.
The need for special operations personnel obviously grew as the global war on terrorism grew, and then we got guys in Africa, we got guys in Iraq, we got guys in Afghanistan, we got guys in the Philippines. We got guys all over the fucking place. We got people in South America. All this stuff happening. So, afterwards, now today looking back, do you think it was a good call by the Secretary of Defense to make the Marine Corps, open up this whole new group of people that to help feed into that, hey, we need people to do these jobs, so you're going to do it?
I think it was because if even, you could make an argument that what was the impact really on the global war of terror? Did it make a huge difference? Maybe not. But I think overall it's good for the health of Special Operations Command because, and this is my bias, but Marines are different than the Army. Obviously different than the Navy and the Air Force, but let's just compare to Green Berets and SEALs, right? Marines are different. Like Marines do things a little bit differently, and some of the things we do differently is like, dude, combined arms shit is our shit. Like that is it. That like expeditionary warfare using combined arms, nobody's better. Like that's our shit. So when you've got guys, even staff officers and shit that have a background in doing that, and you get them in SOTIF, Special Operations Task Force, and combined SOTIFs and all this other things, you're bringing, and then like Marines are more like we're fucking uptight. Like Marines are, you call it professionalism, but like we don't, you know how the Marine Corps is. Like we're about our business, not a lot of fucking around. We run a very tight ship in these joint commands or whatever. And in my opinion, that's good. It's good. It's going to elevate. It's going to add some little special flavor into this like SOCOM thing. And I think people get it now. It took years though, like of the other components of SOCOM being like, these fucking dudes, because it was like we'd show up places and like start being dicks, like we'd be like, why is this a mess? Why are you fat? Why is this fucked up? Like whatever, like kind of doing our Marine thing, and
nitpicking.
It takes some getting used to. Yeah, doing our shit. But
attention to detail.
I think it was good. Yeah, attention to detail. Yeah.
Well,
I think it was good.
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning, it's a different mindset for guys, I think, that join the Marine Corps. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going into it knowing, like, this is the hardest boot camp. This is the hardest, everybody, you've seen Full Metal Jacket. Everybody's seen all the, the stories are out there. Yeah. The Marine Corps is the hardest, longest training and stuff like that. So it already takes a different person, I think, to do that than to, like, go in the Army. Don't get me wrong. People that go into Army contracts or Ranger contracts or Green Beret contracts have that same kind of mentality. But overall, it's just a different kind of mindset. And, having now a fresh group of people with a different mindset coming into like SOCOM, you guys are going to be looking at the problem with a different lens than the guys that are already there. So it's almost like you're looking at it, thinking outside the box compared to the way they're looking at it. Because even though they're SOCOM, they're going to be set in their ways for a lot of stuff that they do. Hey, this is how we do this. This is how the intelligence chain or cycle goes.
Yep.
This is how this goes. And then you guys come in and disrupt it by like, hey, wait.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Like it can be, I can see the good and bad for that.
It might be interesting to your listeners, but like one of the discriminating things between Marine Special Operations team and any other soft team generally, and then even at the company level, especially. So if you go up a level from the team, you've got the company, but the MARSOC deploys with a fully enabled MSOT. So an MSOT has your core group of CSOs, so critical skills operators. So these are by MOS, these are the soft operators in the team. 18 Delta Navy Corpsmen, one or two of those, right? But then they have as organic members of the team a SIGINTer, a HUMINTer, dog handler, depending on the mission. You're going to have potentially an intel analyst. You're going to have a geospatial guy, maybe not at the MSOT, but definitely at the company level and available, right? So an MSOT or a fully enabled MSOT or MSOC shows up and can start doing its own F3AD targeting cycle stuff. So can start doing all the work to like identify targets, build target packages, doing all the processing of all the information to turn it into intelligence, writing IARs, running HUMINT sources, collecting SIGINT data, and then processing the SIGINT data. Pretty amazing. Like they deploy with a system that can connect them to like those systems that would you would be required to do that. So that's a lot to say that like an ODA or a SEAL team shows up, they don't have that shit. Yeah, they just have the dudes,
and maybe some attachments, sometimes a CCT or something like that.
Well, CCT for sure, yeah, and I forgot the fires guy. Yeah, the MSOC guy, the MSOC has a fires guy. Yeah,
how are you gonna forget the fires guy in this podcast? It's cold blooded.
My bad.
So on the last podcast, I had Rob Miller on, who's like an old school Anglico guy, and he talked about how the whole point was for them, it was like always show up and to be self-sustaining. I'm not here. Yeah. I don't need your ammo tech to help me do anything. I don't need drivers. All my dudes are drivers. We've got our own corpsmen. I might need some chow and some water and whatever, but my guys, we have the people that can request that stuff too. I don't need all that. Is that kind of?
Yeah.
I think that's like a big deal for a lot of Marine Corps units, right? For especially a lot of the specialized, the Anglicos, the Recons, the MARSOCs. You want to show up and be like, we're self-sustaining, we're ready to do this, and we need limited help for the most part.
Yeah. Well, and so that's for, that's good to be self-sustaining for your like beans, bandage, bullets, and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm talking about is, hey, we're here, and we also don't need to wait for you to develop a target package or something. We're ready to, it's like about like Afghanistan. We get out into a battle space or whatever. We can start doing all that now. Like we'll tell you, like we'll go from the ground up, like bottom up. We'll build this out, and we'll ask your permission to go on this con op to go process this target or whatever. Whereas, that's a bit more than just being a force provider. Like, okay, hey, I'm here. What do you need me to do? Type stuff. So,
yeah.
Then the other thing is the way we do it, the way we did it. It's like all our guys. So all those enablers, the attachments or whatever, they chop to your team like 180 days out from deployment or something sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're part of the team. They're not like, oh, that's the fires guy. No, it's one team, right? So everybody, and like if you're from the outside looking in, you can't tell that any of those guys are not organic, like from the team originally. Whereas working with these army units and stuff, they'll be like, right before the mission, some dude will show up and he's the SIGINT guy, bolted onto the team type of shit. Like that's not the way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's what you're saying is definitely better because once you embed someone that's like actually part of the team rather than an attachment to the team, you get to know them on like a daily working level. Like what to expect from them. They know what to expect from you. You know what they really can do. We all know what we advertise we can do, but let's be honest, not all of us can do what is advertised. So we know what you actually can do and what you can't do, so we can plan for that and shit. I don't see why that's. It is kind of surprising that some of the other branches don't operate like that. At what level?
Just organized different.
How long? How long do you think some people are at like Raider Battalion or something like that before opportunities to work in the joint world, like maybe another tier up or something, try out for another team and start working with inter service, kind of missions?
Yeah, when you're at MARSOC and you want to go take, one of the tryouts for the tier units, generally you will have to have been there for a while. I'd say I've never seen anybody go try to do that hadn't been around for probably 4 years or so. But other opportunities for external billets pop up. So there's guys that, find themselves on, small teams working out of an embassy. Or maybe they're down in Tampa working at SOCOM headquarters, doing something like that. So there's some opportunities, but MARSOC is small and generally is just operating a little bit below their TO. They have generally just about the right amount of operators, but they always, they're right on the edge there. So they don't have a lot of bandwidth for too many external billets. But the thing is, there's these tracks that guys get into in MARSOC. So this is the other thing that's kind of different about MARSOC is like, you get over there, let's say you're CSO, you go take selection, you go to assessment selection, then you go to the ITC, the individual training course. You come out of the end of that thing with an MOS, the 0372. Then you got to go to language. So that's depending on the language, however long. And then finally, all right, so you hit the street, you're a dude in a team. And then you kind of depends on what you're interested in or what you fall into, but there's these different little lanes that dudes will go into. So like, maybe I'm super into the kind of human stuff. So I go to the school for that kind of thing. And then I might spend the next 10 years getting way deep into that shit. There's guys that, go become CIA trained case officers and stuff like that. Right. So all of that, like you can fall into these like career tracks, or maybe you're super into like tech stuff. And so you kind of fall into that track and you go get schools and training that everybody else doesn't get. It's like a little career field within a career field.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So guys can kind of find, you might get bored like doing CQB and throwing flashbangs or whatever. And you're like, all right, I'm looking for the next thing. Well, maybe the next thing is like some shit you didn't even know existed until you got over there,
Yeah. Yeah. Is that, I talked to guys that were in Recon Battalion and they were like, hey, if I from Recon Battalion, if I want to go try out for another team, one of these other units, the battalion itself kind of frowns upon that. It kind of shuns you, especially if you fail and come back. Is it the same way with MARSOC? Is it like something where you're talking about the almost don't have enough guys? Is it something where they're like, man, I'd rather you stay here rather than go try out for whatever that is?
So there's been times like in the middle of us being in Afghanistan, there's been times when the command straight up said no. They're like, nope, no one's going, right? And they can do that. But generally the way it works is if you want to go, let's say you want to go to one of the tier units, you've got to put in a package for that. And they don't just let anybody that wants to. They kind of try to determine whether they think you have a chance of making it or not. Mm-hmm. And they have to, it's kind of up to them whether they let you go or not. So, but they do let guys go. We've got a pretty good, or they got a pretty good success rate actually compared to like, per capita or whatever. And it actually happened once a few years ago that they let 3 dudes show up to the screener at the same time, thinking, it's kind of rare for anybody to pass it. It wouldn't be uncommon for all 3 of them to not get selected, right? Mm-hmm. But they thought certainly they won't all make it. These dudes were 1, 2, 3. They were ranked 1, 2, 3 in the selection, and the unit they were trying to. Yeah, the unit was like, yeah, we want all these dudes, and MARSOC was like, fuck, all right, you can have 2.
Oh man, that sucks for the number 3 guy.
Yeah, sure does.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah. Oh well. Yeah, man. Well, let's talk. How many times? I want to keep it around 2 hours, but we could talk a little bit more. How many times did you deploy while you were with MARSOC?
I deployed. I did 3 deployments to. Combat deployments. I did 3 deployments, all to Helmand.
Okay, and what was There's obviously different types of deployments for the different MSOTs that are going over there. Either the commando mission or like stuff like that. What was your your first deployment? What were you doing?
So I got a little taste of like all 3 of the kind of ones that we would do. So the first one was early on. So we were basically like a CAT team. We were just operating out of gun trucks, not doing anything that I was considered to be special operations. It was literally like go drive towards the green zone, get in gunfight, call CAS, be out there for 3 to 5 days, go back, that kind of thing. So that was the first deployment working out of FOB Price, so in Garesh. So working Garesh all the way up to Musakala.
Was it so you're saying mostly presence patrols, mostly just like showing that, hey, we have people in this area, or
movement to straight up, like we would just get told where there was pockets of Taliban, and it was like movement to contact, like go straight towards where they are and fight. Like that was it.
Go dig them up. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
And it was, in hindsight, it was a lot of fighting, but in hindsight, it was like, for what? We weren't really targeting. We weren't going after any specific personalities or networks. We were not we were not building partner force capacity because we were taking out our partner force were these ALP guys that we just called them pirates. They were they were barely military. They weren't. They were police, but they weren't even really that.
They don't even wear uniforms. ALP.
We took out only as many as we needed in order to get the con op sold. They were like what was required to get us outside the wire, but then we would pretty much be unilateral.
This is a joint patrol.
Yeah. It's that whole mess, right? So very, very, good experience because we got to fight a lot, and I got to learn about kind of how things work in the Helmand and like some of the TTPs that would remain, TTPs that I'd see for the next few years. But so then the next deployment, where I'm at Robinson, which is like kind of a VSP. At the time, it wasn't. Eventually, FOB Rob would get built up, and the 611 would get paved, and it would be kind of like a base. And actually, the company headquarters later on would occupy FOB Rob. When we were there, 611 wasn't paved. Everything we ate, all the fuel we burned, all the water we drank, had to come out of the sky on parachutes, right? So we were basically 100% supplied by bundle drops, which was an unmitigated pain in the ass. Like we're doing 2 of those drops a week probably, and that's of course the deployment where I'm doing the JTAC thing. So it's like
I was gonna say that's a good workout for your JTAC.
Oh, dude, in addition to everything else going on, like twice a week, I'm out there at 3 a.m, like, clearing C-130s to drop like our water bottles or whatever, and then spending the next 4 hours picking them up with bobcats and loading them on flat. This is one thing. The interesting part about these VSP village stability platform, deployments where an MSOT or a soft team basically goes out wherever and lives kind of in the Ville, and then lives and fights from inside the Ville. Also is meant to raise up a militia force from that environment, train them, employ them, pay them, fight alongside them, all that kind of stuff. So it's real like, unconventional warfare, kind of like build up your G-force type of thing, real like soft type stuff, right? But on those deployments, like by then I'd become a Dari linguist, right? So now I'm in language, so in host nation language, working with an actual partner force, talking. It was a totally different flavor deployment because I'm doing a bunch of stuff I'd never done before. So I'm doing partner force stuff in language. I'm fighting alongside these guys using the language. I'm doing JTAC stuff, which was new to me. I'm also I was also the pay agent for the team. So I'm managing that op fund I was talking about. But we had a bunch of projects going on. We built a clinic right down on the 611. We built a chow hall. So now I'm like doing all this like accounting and project management stuff that I'm like learning on the internet. Like, I'm trying to balance the books. It's like the weirdest shit, right? I'm literally like balancing books, hiring and firing employees. I'm building a clinic, fighting every few days, dealing with. When you live with these people, and I'm sure you've lived with them, it's just the weirdest, like, just things would happen. Like, I'll give you a quick one. So the Fob Robinson's big. It's like, I can't remember how many square kilometers, but it occupies the top of a pretty big plateau looking down on the 611 in Upper Garesh Valley in Helmand, right alongside the Nari Siraj Canal, which is just adjacent to the Helmand River. Mm-hmm. So very kinetic there. So like, you could slug it out with the Taliban right from the HESCO barriers, and we would sometimes. Like, we'd go to the clinic and we'd get in fights like right around the fob all the time. And then the exterior, there was like six or seven tower positions that were manned by these guys called ASG guards. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's a contracting company that hires Afghans. These mostly were Uzbeks. So a bunch of Uzbekis that were employees of this ASG company, and they were manning these guard towers on our base. But they're like a infantry unit. They're not like rent-a-cops. They have like machine guns and shit. Like they're in these like tan uniforms and shit. But these dudes would be out there, and one of the projects we did was we built them bee huts to live in and stuff. But prior to that, they're just like living out like goats at these towers. You know what I mean? Just kind of like living under these lean-tos, and just is crazy. They kept getting shot. So they would, there's a Taliban sniper out in the Ville that kept plugging these dudes. So we had to put like armor, like glass from our blown up trucks and stuff, like the armor from our vehicles. We're building them little armored like cupolas in these towers, some mess. Well, me being the dude that speaks Dari, I'm doing whatever one day, and there's a commotion, and they're like, hey, the ASG guards are at our gate. They're freaking out. You got to go over there. I go over there. They got a dead guy in the back of we loan them a Humvee so they can have one. And there's a dead dude in the back of the Humvee. I'm like, what's going on with this guy? And they're so agitated. And my Dari's not that good. I'm like, no, we need to get a real terp. Get the real terp figured out. So what ended up happening was they got a batch of new dudes, replacement guys or whatever for these guards. Well, one of the new dudes used to live in the same village as the guard force commander, this older dude that was dead. So by the way, the guy that's dead is the guard force commander. So they used to live in the same village, and when the replacement guy was a kid, this guard force commander used to rape him.
Oh my god!
Because that's how they do.
Yeah.
So he was, botcha-baz shit going on, and he botcha-baz this dude back in the day. So when he shows up off the helicopter, the guard force commander's like, "Oh, hey, I know you," and he's like, "It's gonna be like it used to be." And the guy's like, "No." Yeah, basically, yeah. What up, girl? And he's like, "No, I'm a man. Well, I don't do that anymore." And he's like, "Yeah, you work here, you do." And so the guy like waited until he could get away with it, and he just blasted him.
Fuck, man.
So I was like, and then it's like, we're out here in the middle of nowhere. We had to put him in our freezer until they could get a helicopter out there like a couple days later to get him out of there. You know what I mean? Like,
and what'd you guys do with the dude that killed him?
Oh, they just moved him to a different place in the country.
Like, you're a commander now.
They they're like, it's lawless, dude. Like, it's,
Yeah, it's
so it's like that's the kind of thing. Like in the VSP, you're dealing with like life stuff. It's not just like go out and fight. Do your tactical mission. It's like most of it is like how do we maintain ourselves out here? How do we keep and then it's like if you don't do enough kind of like regular infantry style patrolling around your base, then that bubble shrinks. You don't have any white space, right? So you have to be out there kind of bloody in their nose enough so that they don't encroach. And the team that we replaced, the ODA that we replaced, had not been keeping up that white space. So that's why we had these problems, and it took us a good chunk of our deployment to kind of like get out there, push these guys back, build up some better infrastructure, get more systems. It was like this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like when Marines show up, there's a lot of great special forces units for sure, but like this particular team that we had replaced were just kind of lazy. And it was like, we're like, okay, you guys take a lot of IDF. Do you have a counter battery radar? No. You know that they'll give you one, right? If you ask, right? They're free. You don't have to buy it. Like, turns out the military has them. You should have one, because it's like, oh, you're taking IDF. Where's the IDF? You're taking more. We're taking mortars all the time, 60 and 81 millimeter or whatever, 80 millimeter mortars. And it's like, where are these coming from? Well, we don't really know. Well, we should know so we could kill these people and stop them. Like,
yeah, it's kind of annoying. Maybe we don't want this to happen all the time.
Dude, and it's like, hey, why don't you have this? Why don't you have that? It's just because they hadn't done it, and it's like, oh, we don't really. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to show up and we're going to do the Marine thing and just basically work a lot, but and improve the place.
I always tell
safer, make it more effective.
I tell people, I'm like, it's part of being a Marine is just getting over the fuck, this sucks. It's like, hey, we got a mission. Let's just take care of it, or whatever it is. We got to do. It's fucking shitty, but we could sit here and bitch about it, or we could just go do it because we got to do it anyway. So let's just go do it. And I think that's part of being a Marine. You just get so used to like cutting through the bullshit just to get whatever it is you're supposed to be doing done, and try to improve the situation for everyone.
There's the embrace the suck thing, but then the other part of all this is that we do pretty good. MARSOC does pretty good. The MSOTs of like, we make it comfortable. Like, okay, so that place sucked. It was like, butthole part of the world. But like every dude in our team we call them man cans. So a shipping container, right? So everyone lived in their own shipping container that was basically like finished out with plywood. It would have like shelves and a bed and all that kind of stuff with a Chigo. So your own air conditioner in there, internet. Nice. So your own room with air conditioning and internet. How could you possibly have any complaints? Like, dude, that's the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, especially in the middle of fucking Afghanistan. Quick one.
So we're living out there, and we've got some guys in the team that were like recon babies, meaning they came in the Marine Corps, went right to recon, or they'd had some other job like generator mechanic or something and never been in the grunts. Okay, no big deal. But like, so there's dudes in our team that didn't like understand like what the regular Marine Corps was like, kind of, right? We, at a certain point, we were driving from Fob Rob to go. My team commander had a buddy that he was like, some captain buddy of his was at the Mew came ashore. I think it was 1-1 or 1-4. I can't remember. But the Mew came ashore for like 2 months to like hold security while the 611 was getting paved. So these dudes weren't doing a full-blown Afghan deployment. They'd come off the boat, and it was some Marines from 1st Marines. I don't remember. But they had like a battalion CP area out in the middle of the desert. And my captain wanted to go like rub chubs with his buddy over there. So like we go on a fucking TGM out there. It'd been raining and it was miserable. It was like it had been raining for days and it was cold and it was all shitty. On the way out there, we passed this Marine company that's dug in, oriented towards the 611. Okay, they're in a static position, and they've got like the only vehicles or anything they had was like per, I think, platoon or there was like a gun truck or something, and it had like a trailer with like their chow and all that kind of stuff. But the Marines themselves were living in fighting holes with like ponchos on top of
yeah.
them type shit. Fuck yeah! So we stopped to like see what's up with these dudes and give them some like rippets and like protein shake. We live good where we're living. Like we have like all the shit, like all the. So people don't know this. SOCOM gets a different like.
You guys get your own cooks. You guys get all kinds of shit.
Dude, we did. We
ridiculous.
had an Air Force cook. It was nuts. So we stop and we're like talking to these Marines for a minute, like smoking cigs with them and shit. Like we're like, damn, dude. So we get back in the truck and we're leaving. One of the dudes in my truck's like, what the fuck, man? How long what are they doing? Like, why are they fucking living in this mud fill? Like, he was like complaining on their behalf. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, that's their grunts, dude. Like, that's literally their job.
That's their life.
And he's like, yeah, but they don't. I'm like, yeah, bro. Like, that's what it is, dude.
That's
like,
it. That's the same thing. Yeah, when I got over to artillery, I found that out real quick, because I'd been a mechanic for 3 years. I got to artillery, and I'm like, man, we are in the field a lot. Like, we're always out here.
Yeah, Artie's out there all the time.
Yeah, we're living on the OP, and that's why it's cool within the 0861 community because the people you work with, you get so close to because you spend so much time with these people.
Yeah.
I mean, we would go out to Fort Bragg for a month at a time, twice a year. And you'd be like you and your fire support team. So, there's probably 10 or 15 of you guys hanging around. And it's the same 10 or 15 guys. You're just hanging out with them all day, every day for 30 days, calling in fire. When there's artillery's down or you're not doing anything, you're just sitting there. Fuck, man. Everybody starts telling stories. You find out. That's how people become closer than family because your dudes are talking about shit they would never tell people. And you're like, well, that's such is life, Like, I'm not judging you because you're a fucking freak, but, hey, I got my own things.
Dude,
it's a good time.
We were at Rob. We were only 800 meters north of this place called Nole, which was the furthest south Marine position from. So when we were there, it was like 7th Marines in the beginning, and then 3-5 came in. So it ended up being 3-5. That the deployment where 3-5 got pretty mangled up there in Sangin. But at Christmas time. Like whoever the dude, there was like a first sergeant at Nole that fucking hated us. Like we would share that airfield for bundle drops and shit. And so I would go up into their CP sometimes to like coordinate it and stuff like that. And dude, like it's Lord of the Flies when MARSOC team's out there. Like I'm dressed like cut off British cami shorts and like a fucking hoodie or something, beard and like a maniac, right? Going in there and like, hey, I need to talk to the first sergeant. He's like, he hated us, right? But Christmas time we had we got hooked up. So we had the GLOC, these people that are like in Kuwait that are in charge of building the bundles that build us bundles drops and all this shit. I'd been like working on this prior to Christmas for like a month. I got a bunch of turkeys, hams, cakes, like everything you need for Thanksgiving. I'm sorry, not Christmas, Thanksgiving. Everything you need for Thanksgiving shit, like airdropped in. And then we had our Air Force cook, and I, on purpose, we got tons of extra shit, right? We loaded all that shit in the back of a trailer attached to a RG, put like Christmas lights and shit all over our RG-33. We had a dude in a legit Santa outfit that he ordered from like Amazon, right? Like, ho, 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 drive up and just start like giving presents to the Marines and shit. And like, I'm like, this is definitely going to fix it with this first sergeant. Like, he's going to be cool as the other side of the pillow from now on. No, it made it worse.
Oh, yeah. What are you doing? Are you trying to have fun out here? There's a war going on. What do you think you're doing?
He hated us even more.
Oh man, Nole.
The Marines were stoked though.
Nole was a interesting spot. You'd always get shot at going up the hill to Nole. There was like this shitty ass hill that you'd have to go up, and people would always get. There's like a little village at the bottom. People take pot shots at you. We would go up to Nole. They hated us coming up to Nole when I was on my advisor team. Because we're starving out there. We got no food, like we're just living like shit. And we'd come up to Nole, and while our, officer, our team leader and stuff was in like meetings, the rest of us are like going through the fucking freezers we're stealing bags of coffee and shit. Because, they got piles of stuff, and we're like,
where were you guys living?
We were on Jackson. We were on Jackson moving around, but this was after Jackson had, it was no longer a battalion position. It was a company. There was only a company there now, and then the Afghans that were there.
Shit.
Yeah. So
what year was that?
2013. Yeah, 2000. When we first got there, it was 2-7, I believe, or 1-7 that was there, and then they got pulled out and they were replaced with 3-4, and 3-4 was there for like a month or so, and then the battalion main moved up to what was that hilltop fucking across the river? That big ass Shagazi or something like that, had an airstrip on top of it. They moved across the river. There's like a big ass mountain on the other side of the river, and that became like a company position. So, dude, we were just eating fucking one scoop of fucking slop from the hot tray and stuff. So we would,
Dude, I've eaten in that Fob Jackson little, because we'd be up there a bit, about once a week we'd be up there for some bullshit. Our captain meet with, coordinate with the Marines or whatever, and I'd feel bad even like eating that. I'm like, dude, they have this, like, I don't want to eat what little they do have. You know what I mean? Living
rough. Oh man, living off care packages for sure. You get super bummed. You're like, oh damn, no care package this week. Like, fuck. But my team, my team was super cool. Like, we had a lot of good personalities, a lot of good dudes on the team. Our officers had some good connections. So I know one guy knew like some group in Texas who would like once a month or maybe twice a month ship us a big ass box full of jerky. So we and every what was really cool was everybody would get care packages, and we would always keep like one or two. And this is like from my parents. I'd keep one or two things out of it that I want, and then we had a shelf, and everybody would put all their stuff on the shelf
in the middle, right?
So everybody can share from it, and it was really cool.
That's the way to do it,
and that's, you bond with people like that, man. And we were kind of like you guys. You're like outsiders because we were the advisor team, so we weren't with 3-4, but we were on the FOB with them. Yeah, and man, they did not like having us there. The gunny their company gunny and their first sergeant and shit. We had our own little gym. Our logistics officer we had for our team took a vehicle to Leatherneck and sourced somehow a bunch of workout equipment and fucking wood and shit. And we built our own gym, and we had like Connex boxes, shipping containers where you couldn't see it. And I remember being out there working out one morning. I'm just like lifting. And this, it was either the gunny or the first sergeant, I can't remember, comes over, and he's got some sergeant major that had come down to visit the FOB. And he looks at me, and I hadn't shaved yet. I'm sitting here lifting. He's like, yeah, Sergeant Major, these are the kind of guys we have to deal with. And they both just kind of look at me, and I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Like, get the fuck out of here. If you don't want to deal with us, go away. But yeah, man, Sangin's a crazy spot. It's I thought Fob Rob. Sure. I thought Fob Rob was south of Nole. Is it north of Nole?
Yeah. No, if I said no, it's south of Nole. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. See, I never made it all the way. We went from Nole, we went a little bit south of Nole, all the way up. My advisor team would work from south of Nole all the way to the farthest north we went was to Pouze, if you know where that's at.
Yeah.
So we went out there to, we pull up there, we saw the MARSOC dudes out there just living however, very cowboyish, like, because you're in the middle of nowhere, like, who's going to say anything to them out there?
Pouze, they had that place until there was a tragedy that happened. So they had a green on blue where the team commander, the EOD tech, and the team sergeant were murdered. But prior to that happening, because we took our commandos up there a couple of times to do joint patrols with them and stuff. We get up there, and those dudes are right out in the Ville, right outside their gate, like in flip-flops, like, like, passing out candy to the kids, talking like it's cool. I'm like, what? It's chill here or what? They're like, dude, nothing. Yeah, this is all good here. They were like, we're ready to transition this place. Like we've solved it here. Like we're good. And it was real cool. Chill up there until it wasn't.
Yeah, that whole area is just weird, man. It fluctuates back and forth with depending on the season, how many fighters are there, who's wanting to fight. Like I don't know, but
well, that's what bummed me out being back over there as a contractor. So last time I was over there was 2017, and I'm in Kandahar. But by this point, the SODIF was like, it included the Hellman. Like, they had a lot less SODIFs out there, right? And they're covering down on all this terrain. So the unit I was supporting, their Sangin was included in their kind of purview. And I'm watching like Not Ali District Center fall, Sangin District Center fall, like little one place at a time.
Yeah.
Like Taliban taking it over, and I'm like, dang, what was this all for? I'm like, why did we bother? Like the Taliban own Sangin now.
I remember seeing after Sangin fell, I remember seeing some YouTube video, and it showed like the bazaar, and it was just like abandoned with like tumbleweeds floating by, like because they bombed it out.
Isn't that crazy? I can't even imagine that place not being like what it was.
That place was so crazy to just fucking drive through, man. we got to the point where our whoever was the vehicle commander would always be like, when we were like, all right, we're coming up on the bazaar, the vehicle commander would pull his pistol out and turn towards the door and have his hand on the handle. And if I was in the back, or whoever was in the back by the back door, you're in the back with your rifle ready to go to open the door, because there'd always be kids trying to steal shit off the truck, or there'd always be something going on. So you have to be ready for the truck to slam stop. Everyone jumps out with their guns and be like, get the fuck back. And then, because one time they stole I don't remember what the antenna. It was one of the antennas that you could set up on a tripod. It was like a pretty nice antenna. These dudes are like little ninjas, man. Fucking jumped in the back of a Mat V that's driving, that has the bird wire cage thing over that we had built out of Hesco. Cut through that and cut through the straps on an antenna and jumped off the truck and into the middle, into the abyss of the bazaar before the gunner could stop him. And we're just like, God damn it. Like, we just lost our fucking antenna. Luckily, Sergeant Major Hassan, the Afghan Sergeant Major, was basically the mafia don of Sangin. And he would just, he took his Ford Ranger. We pulled up to the base. We're like, hey, Sergeant Major, some kid stole our antenna. He put 2 Afghan dudes in the back of his Ford Ranger. He drove out the gate and came back like 20 minutes later with the antenna bag, the antenna, and the cable.
Got it back.
Yeah, the cable was cut in half, but he got it back, and we're like, dude, how do you know all this?
I couldn't believe, like, driving up there. Most of the time, if we were there for 2 or 3 hours or something would crack off, right? So Marines just getting some right from the Hescos. It'd be some Cobra doing gun runs, like right down the street from Fob Jackson, and then like Marines getting medevaced out of the HLZ. It was like, this is not a rear area base. This is like a forward fighting position.
You're in the mix of it, yeah. I remember sitting outside with my buddy John Isley, who is a logistics officer, and we're sitting there, and there was like a helicopter taking off from the LZ at Jackson, and you just hear boom, boom, and they're fucking shooting RPGs, trying to shoot the helicopter down as it's taking off. It's like, Jesus, like, fucking someone get on the hooks and tell them they're shooting at them. And then a different time, we're all sitting there, and they had taken a moped and turned it into like a little VBID, vehicle-borne IED, and drove it into the bazaar and blew it up. And we're just sitting there and we hear boom, and it's like, holy shit, that was an IED. Like, dude, the first day we got there, that river, right there by Fob Rob, there was always people trying to cross that area. I think we're always getting slayed in the river right there. The first night that we were at Jackson, we showed up. We're like, hey, what's up, advisor team that we're taking over for? We're like, good luck. You guys are getting ready to go home. It's going to be awesome. They're all pumped. They're like, hey, we're making steaks tonight because you guys showed up. We're like, cool. And I just remember sitting there like grilling steaks, and there's tracer fire flying over the fob. And I'm like, where the fuck are we at?
Normal.
Yeah. And we're just like, like it's 10 feet above me. Like, it's fine. The Hesco is protecting us. And I was just like, all right, man, this is a different place. And then because I remember that tracer fire happened, and then someone brought in an Apache and smoked like 3 or 4 dudes. And the next day, they pulled up in a pickup truck with these bodies in the back, and they're like, hey, these are the dudes from last night. And it's like, this is going to be a different deployment than my last one.
I'm sure you did, but did you ever get a look at that hard drive they had in the CP that was like the greatest hits from all the dude, it was from their blimp or their, what do you call that thing, PGSS or whatever?
PGSS or Aerostat.
These dudes they had like a file with all so they had, I don't know how many, probably who knows how many, just videos of like dudes getting vaporized by HIMARS, dudes getting, because they just had those cameras and they would record all these strikes and stuff, and like, pretty cool.
They did keep those. I think some of our contractors had some videos like that. Those blimp dudes are kind of weird, some of them, because one dude he literally sat in a shipping container all day with a big flat screen TV he sat in front of with his controller controlling the camera, and he would just sit there all day long staring at shit with a little radio, and we'd telling him what to look at. And
so that one of those guys was doing maintenance on this is in 2012, was doing maintenance on that thing. They lowered it down, but he was just above the Hesco enough that he got shot and got shot in the eye. It didn't kill him, but it blew his eye out.
No way.
Yeah, because I came up there once and the blimp was down, and I'm talking to the Marines. I'm like, well, the blimp was down. Then I came back there like 4 days later, and the blimp was still down. I'm like, what's up with your blimp, dude? And they're like, oh, you didn't know the contractor that works on it got shot.
Fuck.
Waiting for another dude to get out. Yeah.
When I was in Marja in 2011, we had a aerostat on. I think we had moved from Fob Marja up to Camp Hansen, and they had brought I was working in the command center as the fires chief, and they were like, hey, we're bringing down the aerostat to fill it, you put more air in it or some shit. Yeah. Oh, that's what it was. They were going to inflate it more. And we're like, all right, good to go, because they had to let us know because we're the command center. And then like an hour later, we're just sitting there and we just hear this boom, and the whole building shakes. And I'm like, no, what the fuck? Like, we thought an IED had just gone off right there at the gate or something. And then one of these contractors comes over the radio. He's like, well, we got a ruptured bag. Like, fucking this country ass dude. They had overinflated it, blew that bitch up, blew back one of the contractors, got thrown. Yeah, man, imagine that big ass blimp. This thing's, for those that don't know, I mean, this blimp is bigger than a fucking minivan. I mean, this thing's huge. It's like massive. And, like, we had to medevac one of them because he got blown back, got a concussion, and all this shit. Yeah. But, like, damn. Yeah, they're crazy, man. It's fucking Afghanistan's a weird world, man. I appreciate you coming on and talking some more about it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it.
It's just good general conversation and stuff. Do you want to plug your guys' podcast or anything else?
Yeah, if anybody wants to check it out, it's not necessarily related to much military. It's kind of more of a geopolitical conspiracy type stuff. But it's called Stranger by the Hour. You can find it on YouTube and all the other places. Actually, Rockfin is kind of where we do. We do most of our stuff on Rockfin, and then we got a Patreon too. Some of it's behind a paywall because it's just kind of some real tinfoil hat shit or whatever. But it's mostly fun. We just kind of mostly humorous, you know what I mean? But we're a little bit serious about some of these things. I don't think everybody's seeing the same thing. Like anybody. We talk a lot about reducing dependency on the system so that you can maintain your free. A lot of the freedoms that people are going to lose going forward are going to be due to the fact that they're not in a position to say no to the increasingly authoritarian government. So it's like, hey, I don't want to get XYZ medicine in me. Well, you need to be in a position where you're not required to for your job type of thing. So we talk a lot about that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, it's weird. I forget sometimes that I work from home. Like this is what I do. I do the podcast. I got my website, and stuff. So when people are talking about like, oh, I got to get the vaccine or I'm going to get fired, this and that, and I'm like, dude, I don't even know what that's like. Like, I forget that. For a long time, I would forget about the mask mandate. I'd show up to places without a mask because California is stupid. So we had it forever. Yeah. But I don't go to work every day, or I don't, go do that shit all the time. Yeah, so I show up and I'm like, man, why is everybody acting all fucking weird? Like this is, it's kind of nice, man, but it's not for everyone, to try to work for yourself. But that's the good side is you decide what's good for you. Like you decide what's good for your own business and stuff like that, so.
Right.
That's cool, man. You guys got to throw out those conspiracy theories and. It's a different perspective, even if you go down a rabbit hole of ridiculousness,
Exactly, and it's objectively true that most of the people that are messaging to you are not telling you the whole truth. So the more that you can kind of see, a lot of what we do is just kind of like evaluating the narrative and the rhetoric, and
question
you can kind of see without making any claims about any conspiracies. You can just kind of look at the rhetoric as it's presented and be like, well, this is incoherent and contradictory, so somebody's lying. So that type of thing. Yeah,
for sure. It's something I've been trying to push on my kids. It's like, hey man, question everything. Just because you see it on the news, just because you see it in TV or whatever, just
some celebrity tells you.
Yeah, just because someone in a position of authority said this is how it is, that doesn't necessarily mean that's how it is. Question everything, understand that you may not be hearing the full truth, and seek out better information. So that's cool stuff, man. Everybody can check you guys out. Stranger by the Hour. Stranger Pod is the Instagram channel, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. And then, as always, everybody check out my website, jkramergraphics.com. My Instagram is @formeractionguys and @jkramergraphics. That's it, man. Thanks again for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
For sure.